pursuit of greatness begins at first light and never, ever ends. Time is the enemy, the ally, and the holy grail of every race car driver. Who will be victorious? Only time will tell. Let's go.
An astonishing 11 wins out of 14 starts took Christian Challenger to his first ever America's Regions Championship in the majors. And on top of that, it made him the first and so far only driver to become a champion across multiple regions. But as we've seen in the real world racing, domination can only last so long before the target on your back becomes a bit too big. Will the renewed determination from his rivals see him taken down a peg in 2021? We'll find out soon as we get ready to watch the Majors 2.4 Hours of Daytona, and you'll see it all live here on the Global Sim Racing channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth tonight is Adam Lindgren and DJ Clark. Behind the scenes is our director, Sean Crackers Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Daytona's road course is a circuit that sees a lot of action around this time of year. To find out more about it, let's head to our track guide. Welcome to the Daytona International Speedway. While many oval fans associate this Central Florida track with mainly NASCAR, the road course has gained just as much worldwide fame thanks to it hosting motorcycles and sports cars for decades. In fact, the flagship road race, the 24 Hours of Daytona, has become a major draw for drivers of all disciplines, many eager to have a go at endurance racing. The stats make this place sound relatively simple, with 12 corners on the regular road circuit and 14 on the NASCAR version, both spread amongst 3.5 miles. Indeed, a majority of the lap is spent on the oval portion, where you fly along the notoriously steep banking. But it's easy to underestimate the challenge presented to the drivers. The infield portion begins with the scary kinked entry of Turn 1. Not only is it the fastest part of the track, but the transition from the banking to the flat tends to upset the car as you slow it down. There's also the bus stop chicane on the backstretch. Added in the 80s, this is a tricky piece of circuit that punishes a poor exit severely, with it leading back into the latter half of the oval. As you'd expect, the long periods on throttle mean that drafting tends to play a factor in the racing. It also means passing isn't usually too great of an issue if you have the pace to catch someone. The more difficult thing is managing to gap your opponent so that they don't ride in your slipstream once you get by. With half a century of endurance racing collected among these walls, it's not unfair to say that road racers have just as much claim to call Daytona home. Fans who come to watch certainly won't be disappointed by the high speeds and fantastic thrills it invariably provides each year. Well, Adam, it's been a year and we are back around to the familiar combination of IMSA cars at Daytona's road course.
Absolutely, Joe. Daytona International Speedway, so many beginnings happen at this track. And this year in 2021, they will mean more than they ever have. Not only will it be the beginning of all the NASCAR and related IMSA series, it also has hosted the first round of the Major Series for many years. This prestigious series, which touches the crown jewels of motorsports from across the globe, takes its first laps around this legendary 3.56 mile or 5.7 kilometer facility in its traditional 12-turn road course. 3 classes full of some of the best drivers and most hungry teams on iRacing will take to the track tonight. But even for all its pageantry and tradition, they will need to contend with some new facets tonight in the form of a couple of new makes of car over the last year. The Dallara LMP2, Corvette C8R GTE, Lamborghini Huracan, and BMW M4 GT3 machines will all join the fray. And if those unknowns weren't enough, iRacing recently released a reprofiled version of Daytona to throw a wrench into the plan as well. This makes the typical challenges points of turn 1 and the exit back onto the banking, as well as the bus stop, a familiar but new challenge for the drivers. Each class will have their strengths and weaknesses, with the LMP2s excelling through the high-speed super speedway sectors, while the GTEs and GT3s will feel more at home in the infield, where the multi-class becomes the most challenging, with the potential for miscommunication or misconception of each class's abilities, ending up with colliding with night-ending effects. With all these factors weighing on the drivers and teams, what better place to start such a prestigious series as the Majors, Joe?
No doubt about that. And of course, the Majors finished up the championship, even though we're starting a new one. So let's run down how last season looked here in round 1. Christian Challoner, as I mentioned, taking 11 wins. Driscoll and Travis Warling were the only 2 other drivers in the championship to take multiple wins over the course of last season. That's just how dominant Christian was over everybody else. Of course, Liam Quinn there in 4th, and Brian rounding out the top 5, with a few honorable mentions going to Wade Hayes, Jeff Schmeier, Eric Smith, Nick Kuhn, and Ryan Steele within the top 10 of the pro standings. But they also have what's called the sportsman standings, and that is a sort of a amateur championship. DJ, I believe you have the update on that.
I do indeed, and you can see a similar domination there for Mark Stevenson, taking 9 wins in that Sportsman Championship, although not nearly as commanding of a lead as Christian Challoner was able to have in the Pro Championship. Daniel Johnson, one of the most impressive runs we've seen, never scoring a win, but being able to come home second, absolutely incredible. You can see there, very, very good running, very close across the board, and remember that the difference between a win and second place is 50 points. So that is a very impressive gap to be able to pull that out. A couple of honorable mentions there. Robert DeLoach in 3rd, the only other driver to take a multiple win outside of Stevenson. Yolito, Halleck, Brown, and Powers also taking wins over the course of the season.
Now, for today's race specifically, of course, we've got our race details as well. And like we've mentioned, we are in round 1. They will have a spare car. It is a multi-class race. We'll try and talk to you a little bit about how that will work with the points, because they are still earning normal points, but it's organized slightly differently. We're expecting between 90 and 93 laps, but it is a timed race, 2 hours and 25 minutes that they will be running here. That's what makes up the 2.4 hours, of course, today. And as always, and as they have for multiple seasons now, they've got a charity here for this series. For each race, for this round, it is the Wounded Warrior Project. More than 52,000 servicemen and women have been physically injured in recent military conflicts. 500,000 are living with invisible wounds, from depression to post-traumatic stress disorder and more. 320,000 are experiencing debilitating brain trauma. Advancements in technology and medicine save lives, but the quality of those lives might be profoundly altered. The numbers speak for themselves, because not every warrior can. With the support of the community of donors and team members, Wounded Warrior Project gives a voice to those needs and empowers them to begin the journey to recovery. Find out more at woundedwarriorproject.org. Big thanks to the Majors for making that their opening charity for this round. The way that works is drivers are allowed to qualify as many times as they want, but after their first time qualifying, they will have to pay money, which goes towards the charity, obviously. Now, we do have actual qualifying in this race, as that's for pre-qualifying, mind you. And right now, Jason DeVries on our provisional pole in the prototypes, Thunhorse provisional pole in the GTEs, and no surprises here, Christian Challenger provisional pole in the GT3s.
Yeah, Christian has a couple of the faster GT3 drivers to yet to set a time at this point as well, so his provisional pole should be definitely considered provisional himself, as we see him now going through the kink in the infield sector of this course. And there's Jason Brophy about to come across the line. He's one to keep your eyes on, as well as Rob Powers. Mark Torres has yet to set a time in the GT3s, so quite a few of our quick drivers back there not yet having set their times, but our LMP2s are now finishing up their laps as they're just crossing the line for the second time.
And Torres goes to the pole, 12 1,000ths faster than Christian Challenger. We'll have to check on the 77 when he gets closer to the start-finish line. There we see Torres on screen coming around for his second lap of 4 that he is allowed to set. In the meantime, we're looking at Jeff Schmeier. His first time going to be a 134 flat. That'll put him in 7th place, solidly into the mid-pack.
Yeah, it very much looks like, Joe, that you're going to have to be down into the 33s, potentially the low 33s in these LMP2s, take full advantage of these high banks and the high speeds that they can get, as Jason DeVries right now sitting on top with the 33.278.
Let's head back to Challenger because he's coming down towards the start-finish line. And as the number 77 comes off the banking, he's got to beat a 44.278. He's got a 44.290. What's it going to be? Oh, this one didn't count. Had an off track somewhere.
Yeah.
2 more tries at it.
And Christian knew that. You could see him up high in the banking through 3 and 4, so he was trying to gather as much speed as possible as he headed into headed into turn 1. But he looked like he took turn 1 a little bit hot, so a little bit of locking up with the front tires going into the corner, so he might be a little bit under pressure here. Here's Stephen Jeffrey coming around trying to complete his second lap, but he's about 3 seconds slow, so he's possibly had it off himself. Cold tires are going to be a factor here when we start this race, Joe. A lot of guys have been having trouble keeping the tire grip down in the center of the kink, especially in the GT3 class. Justin Morton currently in 4th. Steve Driscoll crossing the line, and he is going to improve his time by 2 1,000ths, and it's going to keep him in 3rd.
Watching, I'm not seeing many who are able to go quicker on the second lap so far, and this is through all 3 classes. Schmeier going to abandon this lap as he comes down to pit lane. Next up is Eric Smith and his V-Apex machine. And this 3rd lap is his fastest. He's found something out in the number 32, and that will put him up to 4th.
Here comes David Henger driving out, looking like he's taking that high line as well. I think very similar to what Adam said. David knew he had a bit of a bad lap, wants to carry as much speed as possible. Kyle Trudell now coming across in the Corvette. He is unable to improve. And really and truly, Joe, in all of these classes, it's all about where you want the speed. As Jason DeVries pips his own best time, 33.122, 2/10 above his closest competitor of Alex Ellis.
Wow. And Ellis is on his final lap right now, so he has one last chance to respond. This is Christian Challenger still sitting in 2nd place across the line, a 44.282, and that is just shy by 5 1,000ths of a second.
And here comes Alex Ellis to try and set a better time. He's about to hit the bus stop, probably the most challenging part of this course to get right consistently because you approach it so quickly. Looks like that was a pretty clean run through there. I'm not sure whether he has the speed on the exit in order to eclipse Jason DeVries' time at the top of the board. We're going to find out as he exits 3 and 4.
Really mega run from him out of the bus stop, though, at least trying to get it down. You can see how tricky it is diving down here under the line. No, he does not have it. He's coming into the pits.
Interesting.
On his final lap, too.
Looks like Matthew Thunhorst, who holds the pole in the GTEs, has decided he's had enough, but I see Mark Torres coming around for his 3rd lap. The 06 down into the line, a 53.7. That seems to be a slow one for him.
Christian Challenger's also on his final lap. He just exited the infield as we see Austin Espedy trying to set a better time. He does set a better time, a 134 flat, 004. Not going to improve his position, but it's definitely a better time considering his first 2 laps did not count due to off tracks. This is Miles Crabb who's coming across the line trying to improve from 7th, is not going to do so, but this is him starting a first flying lap. Kyle Trudell still trying to improve that time. Can't quite do it though. That 141.1 is eluding him.
Looks like Bennett won't improve. Jeff Schmeier had an off track that time through. So that one not going to count for him. A lot of drivers diving into pit lane and not taking their fourth lap. So seems like most feel that first flyer is the way to go. We've got Christian Challenger. What's it going to be? A 44.253. That's just enough. A quarter of a hundredth of a second.
Yeah, but Mark Torres is still coming out of the corner, so here's Lionel Kalisto, little train trying to cross the line and improve, and he does go up to fourth position in the GTEs. Great job from him. This is Mark Torres. He has yet to hit the bus stop on his final lap. If he can improve his time and jump Christian, that's going to be an impressive feat.
0.024 is all he has to improve to get past Christian Challenger. While all this is happening, oh no, and he runs out of time. Even we got caught out. My goodness. And that is our qualifying over. Torres, unfortunately, taking too long, so let's go through our starting order. Jason DeVries is on the overall pole with Steve Driscoll starting in second position. Then it is Alex Ellis starting in third, Eric Smith in P4, and Clark Archer in fifth. Justin Morton on the outside of row 3 and 6. David Henger will be in the 7th spot, Miles Crabb in 8th. Andrew Wood on the inside of row 5 is flanked by Bruce Perry in top 10, and Austin Espedy will be P11. Then you've got Jeff Schmeier starting 12th. He'll be followed by Johnny Nichols in 13th, Daniel Johnson in 14th, and Adam Halleck in 15th. Daniel Knight, good enough for P16 today. Chris Yatito in the 17th spot is then followed by Justin Kirby in 18th and Marcus Tracy in 19th. Jason Wall at 20th, followed by Josh Collins in 21st. Terry Taylor and Travis Henderson did not set a time here today. Adam?
Matthew Thunhurst is going to take the pole in the GTEs, followed by James Walker on his outside. Travis Worley is going to start off third with Stephen Jeffrey in fourth. Lionel Kalisto is going to start off in fifth place next to Mark Stevenson. Not a great qualifying for him, unfortunately. Kevin Hill is going to line up next to him in seventh, with Zachary Brown in eighth. Brian Bennett ninth, and 10th goes to Lyndon Swaby. Liam Quinn starting outside the top 10 for the first time in quite a while here in the Major Series, with Kyle Trudell next to him in 12th position. Brian Barnes 13th. David Hall's going to start off 14th today next to Brian McGravy in the top 15. Josh Coley is going to start off 16th, with Samuel Harris 17th. Lynn Kinchlow and Ryan Steele round out your GTEs. All right, DJ.
Christian Challenger, you watched him take it to the flag. He will start off in the pole position for those GT3s, followed by Mark Torres outside of him. Very close between those two. Watch that for the entire race. Andrew Waring will line up in third, followed by Jimbo Pfeiffer and Vincent Herbier in fifth. Wayne Hutchinson will be sixth, Nick Kuhn seventh, and rounding out your field, Jason Brophy in eighth and Rob Powers in ninth.
Big field out here, 51 cars taking to the green flag for 2.5 hours of racing to open the 2021 season of the majors. Keep an eye on Jason DeVries in that prototype class. We've seen him be very quick in other series here on the channel, if not a little bit accident prone in some of them. Hasn't been able to get the results that he wants. Can he turn that around here in this field? Steve Driscoll is going to be looking to try and stop him. They will do a split start and give gaps between the cars, but they will all go on the green, so expect them all to be at least on the banking or towards the tri-oval.
Most certainly, and as you look at these cars working their way out of there, it's gonna be tricky. We should expect these LMP2s to be catching the GT3s in probably around 5 to 10 laps. It'll be very, very quick, and once that happens, it can get very, very tight and twisting. All these LMP2 drivers gonna have to stay on their toes for every minute of this 2.4 hour race, rather.
Porsche pace car getting ready to duck in. That'll give DeVries control. There it goes. And DeVries is off immediately. Green flag is out. It's a great jump from Jason DeVries down to the inside of Driscoll. He might lose second place to Alex Ellis. Immediately here into the first corner behind them. Two of the V-Apex cars, Eric Smith and Clark Archer, trying to sneak inside of him as well, but not successfully. Let's go back to the GTEs with Adam.
Matthew Thunhorst still has a good jump over James Walker and Travis Worling. Lionel Kalisto sitting there in fourth position. Stephen Jeffrey still in fifth, but it's side by side back there for the fourth and fifth positions, as well as sixth and seventh. Everyone's being able to weave through nicely as they go for the first horseshoe. Almost three wide as they go into there. That's Stephen Jeffries and Lionel Kalisto battling side by side. DJ?
As we jump back here to those GTEs, you can see them starting to make their way. It is Nick Kuhn who looks like he was able to get the jump on Christian Challoner at the start. Jason Brophy dropping back, as is Mark Torres. Brophy having a great start.
Well, surprised to see Christian Challoner lose that out on that one, but there's plenty of chances to try and pass here as our GT3 class heads through the Western Horseshoe under the setting sun of Florida. Meanwhile, the LMP2s with Jason DeVries leading the way, ahead now of Alex Ellis, who's managed to get into second, ahead of Steve Driscoll. Those three separating themselves from Archer back and forth. They'll get another bite of the slipstream. Let's see if Ellis can even promote himself to the lead.
Ellis had that amazing run off the line, really getting Steve Driscoll. You saw for a second Archer and Smiths try to poke their nose in there off the start, but they have fallen back in a big way, about a second and a half back. Here they go through the tri-oval, going down. Looks like everybody's going to stay relatively nice and calm here. Driscoll taking a little bit wider of a line than Ellis, seeing if it may play off into the first horseshoe.
It did look like that Ellis backed off a little bit, and there's going to be multiple pit stops, especially for these LMP2s throughout these 2.5 hours here, DJ. So I wonder if Ellis is already trying to think ahead.
He may be. We're looking at about 23 lap maximum for these LMP2s. Ooh, there you see some good action happening with the GT3s and a LMP2 very slow there getting involved in it.
Yeah, this is the GTEs. We're looking at the battle for fifth between Brian Bennett, Lionel Callisto, Kevin Hill, Mark Stevenson, and Liam Quinn. They all got held up because of Johnny Nichols, who had trouble on the opening lap through the first horseshoe, and he's just now recovered. But this is the gap that you're going to be able to see develop if the LMP2s end up holding up these GTEs at some point during the lap. That's the kind of gap that you can expect to develop in the battles up here. But we've had some more wrecks up ahead. It looks like Andrew Wood's gone off in the LMP2s.
Try to figure out what happened to him. It looks like he maybe just spun the tires trying to accelerate onto the banking. 64 doesn't hit anything, just keeps going. Back to our LMP2 leaders. Ellis is still behind and got a slipstream on DeVries. This will probably be the most telling. If he backs off again, he clearly is not interested in doing anything but saving fuel, and there you have it right there. But behind him, Driscoll wants that second place back. He might even try and take the lead away as he's going around the high side on the tri-oval. Runs out of speed, though. Can he slot into line? He's got enough space down to the apex. Put Steve Driscoll back into P2.
Hopping over to Christian Challoner, he did take the lead over Andrew Waring going into turn one last lap, so that's why we are seeing him in the position that he is right now. He's currently leading this race over Andrew Waring. It'll be interesting to see whether Andrew tries to make the pass once again or whether he decides to sit behind Christian and do a little bit of fuel saving. Fuel is going to be the name of the game here. I don't believe these GT3s are going to take tires at all tonight, Joe. It may not happen just because of the way that the tire wear happens into the late evening, and especially with the temperatures we have here. Andrew Waring slowly catching up to Christian. He's not going to have enough to pass him into turn one. And we've had a wreck in the GTEs between Zachary Wood and Samuel Harris.
Oh no. Trying to find them here. It looks like they've fallen to the very back of their field. There you can see the GT3s coming up to them. This happened into turn one and nearly caught out a lot of drivers. I think it starts with Brown just spinning in front of the number 42. Yeah, there it is right there.
Absolutely, just a little bit over rotation with the brake bias there in through turn one. It's so easy to do if you carry that trail braking. You're trying to go so quick through that corner. It's hard to realize that you're sliding out there, but we need to go back to the lead of the LMP2s because it's tight.
And in fact, Driscoll looks like he does want to take the lead away from Jason DeVries. It's going to be a drag race down towards the braking zone. Who's got the better guts inside the car? Looks like Driscoll's not going to do it this time. Jason DeVries holds on to P1. I'm sure Ellis likes this. Those two fighting gives them all the more chance to try and sneak up to the front.
As we ride on board with Alex Ellis here, you can see him just how much he's got to fight that wheel to get the front of that car to turn. This LMP2 car, not a big fan of low temperatures and wants it to be about 10 degrees warmer to get maximum grip out of the tires, so you've really got to be working the brakes to maximum effect. And this slippery Daytona infield, always throwing a loop there. You see him catching that moment of oversteer again and again and again. So Ellis doing everything he can, but this is the power moment, Joe. If he can get it on here, he may have a run into the bus stop, and that goes the same for Driscoll. Driscoll, who we've seen really want to get up to that lead.
Don't forget, Driscoll is one of those that missed out on the championship last season. He wants those maximum points as he closes in on the back of DeVries. We watch from over the dashboard of Alex Ellis still. Coming up to the bus stop, Driscoll decides maybe not yet. They both break down into this chicane, try to accelerate out as quickly as they can, taking as much of the track as possible. And I think we had a problem with Bennett, I'm seeing.
Yeah, Brian Bennett just went off in the first horseshoe. I believe it was he outbraked himself there.
Oh, it actually looks like the Western horseshoe. Yeah, and you're right. He did spin, and he's going to get a little bit of a tap. Big contact from Lionel
but look at
Kalisto
this,
in
the
process.
lead of the race starting to change hands again. DeVries tried to get by.
Still on the outside. Lap traffic just in front of him. Brian Barnes is going to pull out of the way. That's a GTE car, not a GT3. He had issues. Meanwhile, we're going to look at a replay of Bennett. This Sector 5 car had a big clip on the front as he lost it. You're going to see it in the second horseshoe here, so we'll wait till after the kink. It's his teammate is what's worse, is the one that gets into him.
Yeah, he just loses it on the braking once again, trying to turn the corner in. And yeah, his teammate gets into it with that left front, unfortunately. That's going to be... That's not great damage for the Porsche, unfortunately.
Yeah, on the nose of the car when you need as much top speed as possible here around the banking. Down into the first corner one more time, and Bennett has fallen to 10th. Since we last looked at DeVries, Driscoll, and Ellis, Ellis seems to be losing touch slightly. You can see him falling back somewhat. Driscoll still holding on. Oh, actually a great run through the bus stop this time for the number 5 of Alex Ellis. Can he try to finally get back up to these top two and keep himself in the game? We're riding on board. Let's see what the slipstream does.
Well, it's not working as great for Alex Ellis. He's a little way back, but working wonders right now for Steve Driscoll. I think he's going to try this move again. You see DeVries covering down that inside line. That's the preferred line through there. You can make it work on the outside. Driscoll very late breaks. Ellis tries to get, DeVries tries to give him a little squeeze. They're going to still be side by side through the start of the infield section, and there goes Driscoll up to the lead, and now Ellis poking his nose in behind DeVries.
For the first time today, a new leader in the LMP2 class. Great pass around the outside. He was not to be denied. Driscoll is now your overall leader. As we've been watching this, we haven't given much love to those GTE cars, and let's take a look at Matthew Thunhorst. He's still only got half a second back to James Walker, and Warling is still in this as well. So I don't think this fight is over. It just looks rather calm for now.
You know, remember, Thunhorst and Walker are teammates, so there could be a little bit of fuel strategy going on here. It's Travis Warling, who is not a teammate with these guys. He's trying to line these guys up and trying to get further forward. I think he'd like to be in James Walker's shoes, but right now, everyone does seem a little bit content to just ride here. They're pulling away from Stephen Jeffrey by the likes of 2 seconds at this point. So these top three, they're remembering that this is a 2-hour, 25-minute race, so they're not in a hurry to go anywhere right now.
Of course, when the traffic comes through, that's going to upset things even more. Meanwhile, Andrew Warren looks like he's got one of the GTEs overtaking him. That's Kyle Trudell. Will that slow him up potentially? Challoner's still right behind him, so if he finds himself checked up into a corner, he'll probably pounce.
Eagle-eyed viewers would notice that Waring did pass Challoner. That was last lap through turn 1. Challoner just ended up letting him by. Not time to challenge him quite yet. But these two guys swapping positions. They are leaving Mark Torres a little bit in the dust here. He's back by about a second, but that first horseshoe, Challoner just a little bit too hot into it. You can see him lose a little bit of time there. He's going to have to gain that back if he wants to stay right on the back of Andrew Waring's bumper.
Credit to Mark Torres. He's managing to at least keep them within range. He's not within attacking range, mind you, but the 06 in his bright blue car is still at least holding on. As they come onto the banking yet one more time. That blue 06 is what you see in the background behind the green car of Andrew Warren and the red, white, and blue of Christian Challoner. 2 hours and 14 minutes left to go in this race, so still a long ways. While we've got a chance, one thing I do want to explain is the points for these multi-class races. essentially what they do is the gaps are 3 times as big, essentially. The first counts as a first for all 3 classes, but then second place actually equals the same amount as third place instead when you get back to second place, and so on down. And that's how they make up for the smaller classes and makes it fair for everybody else. So you're still getting about the same amount of points, even though you're finishing what should be higher up in positions. So we come through the infield onto the banking here. Watching some of our GTE cars.
Yeah, these top 3 look pretty content to ride at this point in the game. They're just trying to pull away from Stephen Jeffrey in fourth behind them. Matthew Funhorst with that great launch over Walker. Warling having settled into this third position. And they're just waiting for those LMP2s to come through and to upset things a little bit. This is the time to cool those tires down, time to get on your fuel strategy and start planning ahead for the rest of the race.
Ooh, our LMP2 leaders are now starting to get into the traffic proper. Driscoll, DeVries, and Ellis are starting to work their way slowly around. In fact, our front runners in the GT3s, I should mention. So they're almost through that slowest class, with it being the smallest of our 3, and they're going to get spread apart. The top 3 in GT3s and LMP2 all together and tripping over one another, but it looks like DeVries is going to get the best run as he goes to the low side of Driscoll. He sees the writing on the wall and lets him through.
He does, and now you see Steve Driscoll popping back down into that draft. I think he's got enough of a run here, Joe, able to go a little bit higher. If he wants it, he could have gone, but I think he's backing off through the tri-oval, just trying to save a little bit of fuel here, seeing if he can eke out maybe one more lap from this LMP2 of his.
They're still early in the stint, only lap 9 right now. I do think that Ellis is probably sitting the best of those 3 if it comes to a fuel strategy, which in races like these, that can often play a big part in things. Mid-pack in the LMP2s is pretty exciting too. Clark Archer overtaking Jeff Schmeier for 10th place. And coming out of the International Horseshoe, looks like Schmeier doesn't have much of an answer. Love the V-Apex liveries, to be honest. That is the V-Apex car of Clark Archer trying to get around the outside of Le Herbier. They have themed them around the NASA space shuttles, each of them taking one of them.
And this, of course, being the 40th year of those shuttles, so you can see all of them out on track, watching their Schmeier trying to get a good run. A little bit of a gutsy move for Archer to try to get by. Archer was up as high as 5th place, but has just been shuffled down a couple laps ago, Joe, as they started to catch these GT3s. Everything just got very, very scrambled in through the infield. They caught him at the absolute worst time, and Archer falling worst of the lot, but ahead of him, Terry Taylor up 13 positions. He's the biggest mover right now in these LMP2s.
As we come onto the banking, Archer was held up slightly by Mark Torres for a moment, so Schmeier's going to get a run. They've now got Christian Challenger up ahead of them as they swing around. The lights start to come on these cars. They cross the start-finish line, and it's going to be a little bit awkward with Waring, who's going to have to go to the outside. Schmeier with a shallow entry down into the first corner. All of them having to navigate one another here for these 2.5 hours. And unfortunately, it seems that Andrew Warren getting some of the worst of it, as he once again is having to dodge out of the way of LMP2's Bruce Perry going through.
Yeah, being the smallest class means you get bullied the most whenever we do these multi-class races. It doesn't matter what series we watch. And so Andrew Waring having to get out of the way, so these LMP2s who are being very aggressive, but down there battling for 12th, 13th, 14th positions in the LMP2 class with still over 2 hours, 10 minutes to go.
Coming up towards turn 6 and going to take down to the apex before that LMP2 can get there. Josh Collins now pulling up to the back of Andrew Waring, easily going up to the high side and around him as Daniel Knight continues to chase. They've also got Andrew Wood behind them. Oh, and side by side once again here as DeVries and Driscoll almost going at it. Alex Ellis back there. Wonder if some of that GTE traffic slowed them up. That's Josh Cully down to their inside that they've gone around. A clear run down into the first corner, and despite being nose to tail, no change in position.
Absolutely brilliant driving there from Jason DeVries, really and truly using those slower GTE's cars as a pick for him going down through the tri-oval, and then a nice little fade to the outside. He's seen Driscoll time and time again try to get that speed through the outside. That's indeed how he lost speed last time out, lost that position. So covering off that route for DeVries, a very widely drive thus far.
Meanwhile, let's look at our lead for the GT3s one more time. Challoner right on top of Waring now. It's not been great traffic lately for the 336. This is, again, for the top spot in the GT3 class now through the infield section. Good news is I don't think they have much more traffic to come through. Marcus Tracy is approaching behind Challoner, who we ride on board with, but it's going to be probably on the oval.
Yeah, they just have about 3 more LMP2s to cut through the field. At that point, they'll be free and clear to battle once again, so Challoner just needs to hang on to the back of Waring until those LMP2s get through and possibly look for an opportunity to take advantage of if the LMP2s catch him out into the bus stop, Andrew Waring that is. Christian's going to be trying to set this up so that he doesn't get caught out into the bus stop by some of these LMP2s as well.
I'm severely impressed with how the racing has gone so far in this first half an hour. It's been impressively professional, which I'm sure sounds silly with this being the pro split, but again, our audience who is new to the majors, this series covers just about every type of racing, every type of car and track you can imagine. So drivers frequently have to get out of their comfort zone. Not everybody is familiar with the dynamic of each style of racing, but so far today, it's been very, very clean and some quite tense fighting. Nobody's really been giving way too much.
Yeah, very intense fighting. These drivers have been very aggressive all day, and it's not the worst thing ever. I mean, they're not making a ton of contact with each other, but we are hearing some drivers come onto the radio and report their displeasure with some of the antics. Here's the traffic once again with our LMP2 leaders, DJ.
And watch here, once again, Jason DeVries just using the last minute of the draft on Lionel Callisto there in front of him to get as much speed as he can, but a mega run from Steve Driscoll coming into the bus stop. But it looks like Driscoll is lifting ever so slightly, doesn't want to make that super aggressive move. Obviously, with a long race like this, nobody wants a repeat of last year's 24 Hours of Daytona when the Mazda and the Acura Team Penske did get together in that exact corner. They're going to stay line astern here. Alex Ellis behind, working their way around Lionel Callisto right there. Another good run from Driscoll. He may have a go.
He's going to try for it. He pops to the outside as they come through the tri-oval. And he's once again going to have to try to outbrake his rival into the first corner, but he breaks very, very early. And behind him, Alex Ellis could have had a look, but decides not to. I think both you and I have been noticing the same thing, Adam, that it seems like Alex Ellis has no interest in getting in front of them. He is saving fuel. Big time as contact between Driscoll and a GTE. That was Mark Stevenson.
Yeah, Mark Stevenson was battling with Kevin Hill up there for the 5th and 6th position. I think that's why we saw Steve Driscoll back off on that pass attempt, because he thought that he might have ran into the GTEs. We're going to see this once again. This is through the International Horseshoe, where Mark Stevenson doesn't realize that he's got multiple LMP2s to his inside and ends up turning in.
And let's stay on this replay after this and go to Zach Brown, because he unfortunately spun and caused a bit of a pileup in the first corner. There's the first contact through the International Horseshoe. Now, if we go to the 28, there
Wow.
it is right there. And unfortunately, so many just having to take very wide lines to avoid getting into him.
And what I'm seeing here is that the track is going through a transition period. The temperatures are starting to drop, and I think that's why we're seeing a lot of people lose traction into turn 1. But this was actually contact.
Yeah, just the tiniest of touches. Trying to figure out who that was with. I didn't quite see. Looks like one of the unorthodox drivers. They've recently adopted a couple fictional mascots on their cars. Not sure that Lola the llama will appreciate that little bit of contact. Up at the front of that class, though, Matthew Thunhorst has still about 4/10 over James Walker, and a similar distance back to third for Travis Warling. Stephen Jeffrey in the 4th place has not had a response to this podium trio who is scampered away.
No, neither has anyone else who's behind him. Unfortunately, they haven't been able to challenge. A couple of drivers, I feel like, are a bit out of place, but they're going to have to settle that through their pit strategy alone here, because this top 3 of Thunhorst, Walker, and Warling has been fairly stout and content to just ride as the 3 are. They have been, they're about to get caught by our LMP2 leaders, though. This is DeVries coming up right behind them. This could give an opportunity to Driscoll or Ellis if they get caught out in the bus stop.
No doubt about that. This is one of the teams that is up and coming here in the major series, the Forge team, Forge Racing team, and currently running 1-2 in the GTEs, way deep in there. My goodness, Steve Driscoll did not want to lose out. Unfortunately, that move may have cost him big momentum.
It really did, Joe. You saw the unorthodox line he had to take down through the 2nd stage of the bus stop, absolutely compromising his exit. That gap up to the leader now of Jason DeVries up to about 5/10 of a second. So Driscoll's going to have to fight that back, but he certainly has the speed to be able to do it.
Let's go back to the GTE leaders, because Warling's got a big run with those 2 Forge drivers getting held up in the bus stop. He's going to try around the outside. He at least gets into 2nd, past the likes of Walker. Travis Warling continues to try and fight for that top spot as they go 2 wide through the S's into the International Horseshoe. Once again, he's on the undesired line, the outside, and as he cuts back, the wheels spin up, so that Corvette is going to have to get back into that 2nd spot and try again later.
Warling, a dog among the wolves of the Forge team. Those Forge guys got held up. Walker didn't take the opportunity to go around Thunhorst when Thunhorst got held up to the horseshoe, and that gave Warling the biggest run he's probably going to have of the night. That's why we saw him take that opportunity into turn 1, and now he's been able to settle into 2nd place. Let's see whether they can make a move on Thunhorst through the rest of this lap.
As they come on to the banking, Warling in a different car from the other 2 around him. The Forge team electing to use the Porsche, as they're going to be overtaken by one of the V-Apex LMP2s. Eric Smith will be able to clear all of them. It's going to be a little bit close. He's got to kind of weave through, and now he finally gets by.
There he goes, and you can see great camera angle from Dougie Beer here. You can see just what it's doing and how he's got to stay on it coming through there. The GTE's disappearing behind him in the distance.
Sounds like we had a bit of an incident, but before we go to that, we got to stay with this battle for the lead. Travis Warling going around the outside. Last time he couldn't get all the way up to the top spot, but he had to pass 2 of them. This time it's only 1, and he is there before they get to the braking zone. But up comes Justin Morton, 5th place in the LMP2s, as we had a car off to the side of the track. That's Rob Powers in the GT3, I think.
Yep, so Warling making that move to put himself in the lead of this race, and I think that Thunhorst and Walker won't be too disconcerted with that one. They've got, that was Justin Morton slicing his way through, as well as David Hanger and Austin Espedy, who's going to be making his way through as well, trying to break up this battle just a little bit.
I was about to say, before that fight suddenly happened down into the 1st corner, I noticed that you had caught a bit of an incident on track there, Adam.
Yeah, McGreevy got into Kinchlow. Both of these 2 are teammates in the in the GTE class. Lynn Kinchlow and Brian McGreevy, and they were side by side going into turn 1 and got into each other just a little bit. So they're back to 15th and 16th in class in the GTEs.
Warling off and ahead as we take a look at Kinchlow now. About 1.5 seconds ahead of Brian McGreevy at this point. Up to our LMP2 leaders, DeVries, Driscoll, Ellis, despite fighting, are continuing to run away from everybody else. It's 7.5 seconds ahead of Eric Smith. They're both going to go to the inside of Nick Kuhn in our GT3 class, who dutifully stays out of the way through the 1st corner.
And Joe, we jump back here to P5. Really good battling here. This is the battle between Justin Morton and David Henger. Very, very close as they go into the first horseshoe, trying to get that power down. Such a tricky corner, these LMP2s. They want to slip away for you.
They're starting to get towards the end of their first stint as well. We're on lap 17 for our LMP2 class. These cars known for going about 30 to 35 minutes. Ooh, something of a slide there from Morton coming out of the Western Horseshoe. So we should see drivers come in soon, but we have to remember that compared to most other normal tracks, this is a roval with two very long high bank sections where it is completely flat out. So I would think these things are going to be sucking up fuel like crazy.
Oh, they most certainly are, Joe. By my calculations, they'll have to come in on about lap 23 is the maximum they can take it. Is there you see, that is the move. Henger trying to go around, and it looks like he's got it into the bus stop.
Didn't seem like Morton was interested in fighting it too much, so David Henger up to P5 with that one. Back to our leaders, and thought maybe for a second they might be side by side. But no, De Vries is still leading Steve Driscoll. Jimbo Pfeiffer kind of at a strange spot here through the S's. It is so narrow through there. And in fact, going to be sort of at an awful spot for Alex Ellis now in the International Horseshoe. Loses a tiny little bit of time. Nothing to worry about here because he'll get the slipstream once they get onto the banking.
He'll get that slipstream back. And Joe, on the previous two laps, not this last one, but the two laps before that, Ellis set the fastest time of the race. So our theory that he is fuel saving definitely playing in, but hoy, here they come up on a whole slew of GT cars. Oh, tough ended there. That's De Vries side by side. Oh, and he's able to get through Brian Barnes, but very, very close.
And that was our third place driver in the GT3s, Mark Torres, that he nearly made contact with. Slowed him up enough that here comes Driscoll. He's got the slipstream coming up to the bus stop, but they're having to go in and out of our GT3 cars. All three of by as they come out of the bus stop, and whatever Driscoll may have gained, he has given back.
Yeah, Driscoll just being very patient here, not forcing any sort of issue. But as I was saying, Alex Ellis clearly has the speed. He has set two of the fastest laps, and so he's got the speed just sitting back there in the popcorn position, being very, very calm and cautious.
And Joe, I have a report on our GT3 leaders, Andrew Waring and Christian Challoner. These are the guys that lead group just cut their way through. And Andrew Waring and Christian Challoner, Christian actually, as we see that, Brian Barnes just washes out in front of them. That's going to put a challenge on Andrew Waring here. But Christian Challoner, up to this point, has been very content to ride behind Waring. You can see that he's not putting the pressure on Waring here as they head through the International Horseshoe. And he is currently in fuel-saving mode. He had the opportunity to pass Waring on the front straight as they crossed the line, but declined to do so. So he's currently very much soft-pedaling that thing.
And this is worst case scenario for our leaders because Brian Barnes is in the GTE class, and it's not that they're lapping him. This is for overall position. The GT3s and GTEs can be very similar on pace at times, depending on who's wielding them, and that seems to be the case between Barnes and Waring.
Yeah, unfortunately it is, but as we're watching this, we should head back to the LMP2 lead because Steve Driscoll's once again closed up to the back of De Vries as they head into the horseshoe.
Absolutely nothing between these top three. It seems like anytime they start to pull away the mega draft on the banked sections of this Daytona circuit, really able to pull it back in. So here comes Driscoll. He's got a good run here. Let's watch and see. Great camera angle again. You can see Driscoll starting to close in, but backing off ever so slightly and just maintaining that gap. I think he could be in a bit of fuel saving trying to get going here. We are working lap 20 right now, so I estimate about 3 more laps before these guys have to dive it on in.
Sounds about right to me. As we hop on board once again with Alex Ellis, watching the wheel to see how his car is handling at this point in the stint. Through the infield section, not the most comfy of places to try and drive these LMP2s. Trimmed out from the banking, they lack grip here through the twisty flat bits in the middle of the circuit. And oh, wow, yeah, you can see it with how much he is sawing away.
Well, and Joe, it is just going to get harder and harder for these guys as the night goes along. 79 degrees track temperature right now as the sun continues to fall. That track temperature is for sure going to drop, and with it, we'll lose more and more grip. You can see just how much Ellis is struggling to get the power down out of the infield section, and that gap up to Driscoll now up to about 0.8 of a second.
Oh, but Driscoll's going to get split because Kinchlow, and Kinchlow's going to hold back. Woo! Scary stuff for Ellis there. Couldn't have been certain that Lynn would time that right, but thank goodness everybody manages to go through. Driscoll now going around Ryan Steele as well. You can see that they have dropped Alex Ellis by a wide margin just from that one incident.
And Kinchlow just remarked on the radio about how sketchy that moment was for him as well. He's just not had the greatest day. He just recently had a self-spin in the International Horseshoe as well. It's put it back to 18th position. But look at this battle for the lead in the LMP2. So close there with a couple of our lapping GT3s.
Ellis regains all the time, isn't able to overtake, but I've said it before and I'll say it again. When it comes to multi-class racing, traffic giveth and traffic taketh. And all three of our leaders have all learned that lesson here in this last lap and a half, coming through the Western Horseshoe. Since pretty much the drop of the green, if you're just joining us right now, DeVries, Driscoll, and Ellis, who you see on your screen, have been essentially this close and have not separated, and it's been an incredibly tight fight.
It really has. The gap back to Eric Smith in fourth is a whopping 7.3 seconds. Meanwhile, the gap covering this top three is only 0.6 of a second, 0.7 now. So absolutely insanely close over the top as they carve their way through the field. Much less hassle this time through the bus stop. Everybody's starting to game each other up, working lap 21 right now, about 2 more laps to the max pit window. So I wouldn't be surprised if we maybe see somebody try to come in here, one of the closer to the top LMP2s, seeing if they can maybe go for an undercut, if they can make a few laps last later in the race.
And interestingly enough, as we watch these LMP2s battle, a similar situation is going on in the GT3s as well. They are still under a blanket of about a second and a half between Andrew Waring, Christian Challoner, and Mark Torres here, as we see them go through the International Horseshoe separated by Justin Kirby. Looking at Christian Challoner now, as he's going to tuck up behind Andrew Waring. Christian very content to ride behind Waring and save that fuel, as was mentioned before. Mark Torres has now clawed onto the back of them in that kinetic machine, the Lamborghini Huracan.
As we watch them come up towards the start-finish line on the helmet cam of Mark Torres. We know how wily of a driver that Christian Challoner is. I think you're right. I think this is just all part of the plan, essentially. Christian just kind of riding and letting the race come to him. Oh, do we have a problem with Samuel Harris? I think the 42 had an issue in turn 6. Let's take a look.
And this was a self-spin, actually, coming onto the banking. So easy to do into this corner. Just carried a little bit too much speed. Locked up the right rear brake as he tried to turn that corner and ended up spinning it around.
That was Brian McGreevy directly behind him, gaining a position, but also having to take avoidance maneuvers to get by. Oh, did I see another issue?
Yes, this was with Josh Coley in the bus stop. He's now recovered. It was he just took it too deep into the bus stop in his Corvette, and ended up taking it too deep into the bus stop, locked up the front tires.
Oh. And Zach Brown got very close to running into him for the exact same problem. Meanwhile, we have our first driver in from the LMP2s, and this is lap 23, so this makes sense. Eric Smith down and takes that 32 in for fuel, and looks like no tires, though.
No, Joe, I suspect that they'll double stint on the tires. And so you see him there in that Space Shuttle themed livery getting ready to go and getting ready to head back out as soon as he has got a full fuel tank. We'll have to see if he can deposit himself in some relatively clean air and maybe hope to gain up a few positions, gain back a little bit on that massive 7.5-second gap that was to him to the leaders.
Hearing a couple other drivers saying they're pitting in. Bruce Perry seems to be one of them. Wallet marked that he is going to enter into the lane next time through. See, Daniel Johnson has been in and out, but that was very early, and I think that was due to some damage that he had taken. So that is not scheduled.
And just in case you're wondering when the GTs will come in, they've got another about 10 laps of endurance. So we're going to be watching LMP2s and our leader, Jason DeVries, into the pits.
But Driscoll is not, and neither is Ellis. At some point, you got to pay the piper for leading the way.
And that's exactly what it is. Both Driscoll and Ellis, as Driscoll tries to go around the outside of the first turn there, and that's going to pull Alex Ellis right up behind him. Ellis looks like he may have tried to go around the outside there of the Eastern Horseshoe or the International Horseshoe. Didn't happen there, so he's going to stay in line on everything. Now, with DeVries in here, this is one of those moments where you have got to push like nobody's business if you're Steve Driscoll. But the guy who's most going to be benefited by this is Alex Ellis. He still has the draft from Driscoll, and he will be able to pull ahead just as quickly.
Boy, it is an absolute pit party now. Not only has DeVries pitted, Archer, Morton, Hanger, Crabb, Wood, Espedy, Schmeier. In fact, pretty much everybody, I think. Yeah, looks like the entire field, except for Driscoll and Ellis, had to come in on this stop. So the 51 and the 5 are sitting in the best position in terms of strategy from here on out.
And taking a look at this, nobody is taking tires in the LMP2 field on this first pit stop. So that's definitely outside the strategy that they are planning on taking in this race.
All right, things going to get fascinating here. Was Ellis going around again? My goodness. Ellis with some Dixon-esque saving of fuel goes around for lap 25 now as Steve Driscoll enters. DeVries is just onto the banking in NASCAR 1.
Now, what's going to be the moment here for Alex Ellis is, yes, it's good to save fuel, but you've got to capitalize on your in and out lap. If Ellis doesn't have the draft here, and by some imagination, he is able to pick up the draft, he'll be good. But if he doesn't, and maybe Driscoll or anybody behind him is able to get that draft, it could hurt him. But it is a good thing to notice. He is fuel saving that entire time, but set the fastest lap while he was doing it, Joe.
Master of strategy. DeVries is now coming across the line. Driscoll is exiting out, and he's going to be jumped easily as DeVries is through. In fact, this is a hugely wide margin. Their pit times were only about 2 seconds apart from cone to cone, so DeVries may have maximized that.
Well, that's exactly right, Joe. Their pit time was about 2 seconds apart, and Jason DeVries is about 1.7 up ahead of Driscoll, so that would account for the time lost.
There you go. So everything has to be pushed to the absolute limit if you want to win this race. It doesn't seem like you can rest on your laurels.
Oh. I think we've had our first DNF, or possible, well, not DNF because we have the spare cars, but Justin Kirby lost control coming out of the bus stop chicane and is now into the pits.
Car 43 with a big lick to the outside wall. There we go. This is onto the backstretch now, and he's going to go nose first. He is going to exit. He's decided to DNF, so despite having the spare car, it seems he didn't have interest in trying to ply on. Oh.
Ow, that'll wake you up in the morning. Just lost it halfway through the bus stop and had nowhere to go but straight into the wall. But Joe, Alex Ellis is in the pits right now with, it looks like the boys who we know well closing in close.
All right, DeVries past the pit entry. Ellis is moving. This is looking like it'll be a little bit closer. Here comes Jason round the outside. In fact, this is going to be incredibly tight coming off of pit lane. I think Alex Ellis will actually have this. Indeed, he does. Ellis is now into the lead in the LMP2 class.
Absolutely amazing run from Ellis as now he works by, puts Samuel Harris in that GTE behind him. A nice little buffer between him and Jason DeVries. Way to go, Alex Ellis. Fuel saving paying off.
Question is, can Driscoll catch them? Because I'm pretty certain he's ahead of DeVries, but DeVries could use the slipstream to get back up to the gearbox of the 89. Is Driscoll close enough that he could do the same?
Well, the draft here at Daytona and in most of these LMP2s on a big draft is about 1.5 seconds.
Sorry, guys, we have a wrecker in middle of turn 1, I believe. That's Kevin Hill from 3rd position in the GTEs.
Looks like he's going to be able to get it rolling.
This was a self-spin, but this is a very big player in the GTE field. He was running around still about 7 laps from when he needs to come into the pits. Ends up just getting it too deep into the corner, tries to turn a little bit too early, and spins it around, parking it right in the middle of the racing line. Yeah,
that's Halleck, Knight, and Callisto, who all do a fantastic job slowing up, making sure they don't run into him, just weaving around either side. We come back live now. Yeah, I think we've only had, just 2 DNFs so far, Kirby and Travis Henderson, the only 2, and I think Henderson was even a did not start for today. Still waiting on our GT classes to pit because they have a much wider window, tended to be closer to an hour in length.
Yeah, they've got about 6 to 7 laps before they're going to come in. I'm very curious to see how far Christian Challoner is going to be able to stretch it, because he's been in the draft of Andrew Waring in that GT3 machine for the entire time. That being said, there are battles all over the track, especially for the lead of classes, but the LMP2 battle just continues to be ferocious. Those guys just are not separated.
No doubt about that. And the answer to my question is yes, Steve Driscoll can definitely catch up to the back of them, because it's now 1, 2, 3 split by 0.3 of a second. Meanwhile, we're watching Challoner in his BMW GT3 just following behind our leader in the GT3 class, Andrew Waring. Gonna get some traffic up behind them. This looks like Daniel Knight and Adam Halleck.
So Andrew's gonna have to come in about 8 laps time, because he's been leading this race since the drop of the flag, more or less. Christian got past him for one moment, but then ended up dropping back and letting Andrew lead. And as you can see, Christian has no intention of getting past Andrew. I would expect Christian to be able to go 1, maybe even 2 laps longer on this fuel stint, because he's been probably around half throttle through a decent portion of the laps that he's been doing, especially here on the super speedway portion of the lap.
Always thinking ahead, always trying to find himself that little edge over the rest of the field. And yeah, this is a perfect example right here, just watching him. He should absolutely have the slipstream and be gaining on the back of that car, but is sitting put. Ooh, and I keep mentioning Knight and Halleck, but I think they've gotten into a nice little fight, as Knight's going to be able to use that slipstream. No, actually defending. Knight didn't get the spot. He kept Halleck behind him.
And guys, if we stay here, as soon as they go through turn 1, let's jump over to Alex Ellis, because he actually just let DeVries and Driscoll by, and they let him do that.
There's a successful defense on the inside from Knight. And there's Ellis, yeah, all the way up on the high side, and deciding, I liked how that worked out last time, let's do it again.
Yeah, you see him there. Very smart move to be able to pull himself back into that fuel-saving position once again. Alex Ellis clearly thinking about the long game here, letting them fight, and now they have Zachary Brown ahead of them as they work their way into the International Horseshoe, making their way around that lap traffic, staying off nice and easy for him. But Alex Ellis really playing with his whole head here today. This is a good drive from Ellis. Do not be surprised if he continues on this fuel-saving run and is able to eke out a couple of gallons on this and the next stint.
We had a big accident about a minute and a half ago between Sam Harris, Lynn Kinchlow, and Rob Powers. And I think Powers came out the worst of it as he went off track and had to wait a long time to find a clearing to return safely. We'll see if we can pull this up.
Yeah, this started with Rob Powers sliding off on his own accord. We're going to see it right here as they go through
that's
the Western Horseshoe.
And it's all three of them making contact.
Oh, wow. I thought Rob went off on his own. I was wrong.
No, Corvette got him. GTE car. Rob being in the GT3 class. And that was Kinchlow, actually, involved.
Yeah, Lynn's bad night continues. He's just, unfortunately, just doesn't seem to be able to put the car where he wants to tonight.
Well, I'd hope that he doesn't want to put it into the back of Rob Powers. So as we go back to the lead in LMP2, Jason DeVries now back up in the lead. They're going to come by David Hall. Should be able to easily stay off to the left side, let all three of them on the inside of the International Horseshoe 2 get through, but then Alex Ellis unfortunately has to wait a little bit longer.
Yeah, he'll have to try to get that pass down at the kink, and there he goes on by. That'll stretch out the gap a little bit, but Ellis able to keep nice and close behind these two. Now, it's interesting to note Steve Driscoll back in the position we saw him before the pit stop, sitting in second. Driscoll doing a lot of what he did on the last stint, which is just being very patient and staying behind on DeVries, not wanting to make a mega move. I think he's thinking with his head too. We saw what Ellis was able to do, stretch out another lap on that stint, and he is very, very fearful of that, wanting to maximize fuel consumption here today.
Now, put yourself in DeVries' position, DJ, because I feel like if I was him, after I watched what happened, and whoa, as he puts, that was Mark Stevenson offline and has to cut the bus stop. In fact, he gets on the radio in displeasure about that. Put yourself in DeVries' shoes. Decide, no, I don't want to be in the front of this group. I'm going to let those two lead me this time.
Well, if I'm doing the math backwards, Joe, if he can make 23 laps work, he can make it work. He'll be able to go in and be fine. He's not going to lose a pit stop over the course of this. This is just 2.4 hours, 2 hours and 25 minutes. It's not like he's going to be able to gain or lose a pit stop. But, you know, he's able to lead. He's able to hold it off. In a lot of ways, I think he's forcing Driscoll to show his hand a little bit and maybe getting the sense of where Driscoll wants to attack. So it could pay off for him in the long run.
I'm going to jump back to our GTE lead because Warling has been up at the front for a long time, and Thunhorst has been staying about half a second back, but here we go. He's got the slipstream. It's coming up to the back of him, but he lifts.
Nah, it's not time yet. And Travis Warling even opening the door and almost inviting Thunhorst to go through and lead a couple laps, but Thunhorst says, no, I'm good here. I'll save some fuel. I'll get you on the fuel strategy instead. Maybe gain some track position that way. And Travis Warling actually looking to be a little bit unstable on the exit of turn 1. But yeah, Warling's been leading this for quite a while. Thunhorst just very content to ride there in the second position. The gap has been up to at max 2 seconds between these two guys, but the traffic giveth and traffic taketh away, like you said, Joe. And Thunhorst right under the back of Warling for some fuel saving before their pit stops.
Also, James Walker, remember, it was a 3-car fight. He is way back there. He's 5 seconds off of our top 2. I don't know what happened to the 97. Maybe it was a little bit of traffic. Maybe he really is down on pace, but he's no longer a factor as things stand.
Yeah, it was absolutely traffic that came into play and a couple of wrecks that happened ahead of him that he had to avoid. so that's why he is out of position by about 5 seconds. He should be able to gain that back if he's able to play the traffic right, but of course, that's a given. Here comes Justin Morton making past Clark Archer for 9th in the LMP2s.
Now, Clark Archer also lost a spot to Terry Taylor not many laps ago. I think Archer might have some sort of damage that's slowing him down. Can we get a close-up shot of the number 3? See if we can spot anything on it.
Right front diffuser damage, Jim.
And right rear.
Yeah, he definitely has gotten a little bit of damage, whether that's some contact with some lap traffic or maybe just a bump on the wall. Oh! And there he goes. That car, very, very ill handling for Archer. He takes off to the grass and now has to get it back and going again.
Almost gave Dougie a scare. He was off on the camera there in the International Horseshoe and just about plowed right into him. But thankfully did not hit anything in the process of things. Now, one thing that I want to talk about here, because we haven't gone to many battles in the mid-packs of each of the classes because the lead's been so great in all 3 of them. Liam Quinn and Brian Bennett have been extremely close to one another.
Oh, sorry, Joe. I mean, I would love to go there, but Matthew Thunhorst just made the pass on Travis Worling, who took it too deep into the Western Horseshoe.
Let's take a look at that one. Let's see as they come up. It looks like the slipstream is going to help him coming up towards the first turn, making sure he's nice and tight, holding on to that fuel like you were talking about. A lot of traffic coming through them as well. Let's see if he gets compromised at all. They are going to be split temporarily by one of the kinetic LMP2s.
And here they go through the International Horseshoe, and this is where he starts getting put offline just a little bit. It's side by side between the two of them as they go through the kink. And as you can see, Thunhorst just backs off and lets Worling go through, but I think this set up Worling badly for breaking into the Western Horseshoe. As he goes in, he just takes it too deep, and Thunhorst just says, oh, thank you very much, and moves into first.
Great job there by Matthew Thunhorst, one of our former champions in this series. Travis Worling giving chase, but the shoe is on the other foot proverbially, and he could now also save fuel. And I'm seeing Clark Archer in. I think Archer has had enough of that damage on the car. Also looks like we're starting to get some of our GTE drivers down the lane. Lionel Callisto among them.
It's going to get very busy here in pit lane in the next 2 to 3 laps with all of the GT cars coming in. We've also had early stops from Vincent Leherbier and Rob Powers, as well as Brian Barnes and Stephen Jeffries, though those were a couple of laps ago. Stephen Jeffries was about 3 laps ago when he came in. Callisto in, looks like for fuel only, so he should be able to come out in about a 30-second stop, so we'll see whether or not he jumps out very shortly. Still in the pit lane. There he goes. So yes, a fuel only stop, and he's back out rolling.
I seem to recall hearing that some of the classes, especially the GT3s, which Callisto is not a part of, this is a GTE car, might not even take tires at all during the course of this race.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. It just depends on how much... I don't know, though. To be honest, it depends on how much tire wear you get, and with the aggressiveness we've seen throughout this split so far, I would expect most people to be taking tires at some point during this race. Just for the safety of it, though somebody could try and pull something here, and especially in the GT3s, try and go without taking tires, but it's going to be a real risk as Matthew Thunhorst comes in, actually, from the lead of the GTEs.
He got the track position, and now he decides that's what I wanted. Time to pit. Looks like he's also being joined by Wayne Hutchison coming through, one of our GT3 cars.
And Christian Challoner has also pulled ahead of Andrew Waring, so I would expect that he's going to be coming into the pits sometime soon. Either that or Andrew Waring let him go through. Liam Quinn's into the pits as well for the GTEs. He very much missed his pit box. Brian Bennett in as well. But here's that battle between Waring and Challoner. Challoner through, and I think Waring let him by.
I was just going to say, when did he go by? Was that recent? because he was behind him for much of the first part of this stint. I'm checking right now, and it happened a while ago, it appears.
Yeah, so Christian, I guess, forced into this lead position as Andrew Waring trying to get some of that fuel saving done, probably looking at trying to work the race backwards to forwards and trying to figure out where he's going to be able to save that fuel, and he decided now's the time.
Liam Quinn returning to the track. Remember, he was battling with Brian Bennett, who also is in and out, but Bennett a lot longer. It looks like Bennett took tires and Quinn did not.
I actually can't figure out why Brian Bennett's stop was that long, because with tires it should be longer than 43 seconds. So he's just kind of in a strange window a little bit as Travis Worling comes in from the lead of the GTEs as well to get his pit stops done. James Walker is going to come in as well, about 5 seconds behind him. Worling hits his pit successfully. Walker looks like he's going to be able to hit his as well. Both of them hitting their pit stops very cleanly as we continue to watch this GT3 lead battle. It's going to be interesting. I'm pretty sure I would expect one of them to come in very shortly.
Oh, and Driscoll is trying to take the lead away from DeVries, but he gets blocked by traffic. That was Vincent Leherbier, who was at the wrong place at the wrong time for poor Steve Driscoll. Alex Ellis gratefully takes the second spot, and they are still together, so it's not a dire situation for the 51, but that didn't seem to go quite as planned.
And Andrew Waring is into the pits from second position in the GT3 class, so Waring starting his pit cycle. Kevin Hill and Lyndon Swaby are in from the GTEs, as well as James Walker. So Christian Challoner still out there lapping with Mark Torres, less than a second behind. Torres able to close that gap in the GT3's lead once again.
So theory for you, Adam, as to why we had a weird time of stop for one of our GTEs. Could it be a case of pay me now versus pay me later sort of thing? That he's taking his long stop now, and Quinn is taking his short stop now, knowing he'll have to take a long one later.
I mean, I suppose it just doesn't usually work out that well, especially with a two-stop race for these GT machines, to try and pay the piper this early. It just tends to. I just haven't seen that strategy work very well, especially considering the fact that you're going to be running very long on these used sets of tires here. So here we go with Ellis and Driscoll once again.
Driscoll's caught back up to the back of Ellis. Ellis losing slight touch with Jason DeVries as they break into the first corner. We're still going to be able to use the slipstream to get back with one another. They were putting a lap on another LMP2 car. That was not for position with Marcus Tracy, as you saw him briefly on screen amongst them.
Well, it leads to my point of just how close they are running each other on this entire time, and whether or not Steve Driscoll is now going to be content to lay back in third place, and same with Alex Ellis up into second. They'll both be able to fuel save from there, but it'll be interesting to see what exactly they do.
Ooh, and Christian Challoner missed his box. He had the first box on the lane and didn't realize that he missed his box by quite a bit. He probably lost a good 10 seconds there.
Oh no, he's going to have a lot of work to do. Let's watch the replay. How far was it? Oh, and he noticed it almost immediately, but even with that, it is such a shock. For those not familiar with iRacing and why he wouldn't know where he's pitting, it assigns it according to where you qualified, and unless you're paying close attention and know exactly how many stalls are available, you can easily be caught out by having that very last one, which is what happened to Christian Challoner. In fact, at some tracks, it's so far down the pit lane that a wall blocks your view and you can't even see it until you pass it.
And that's exactly what happened to Christian right there. He had no idea that he was in that first stall and charged in. He's very good at maximizing pit entry, and that time, maximizing it actually hurt him.
Well, I think he's going to be taking note for the second pit stop of the race when he eventually gets to that one. But what is this going to do in the fight that he has had with Waring? And did he still beat out Waring? He did. Challoner, oh, okay, interesting.
Oh, wow.
Challoner took his short stop this time.
Very interesting. So, I just don't, how is he going to save fuel then?
Well,
and Andrew Waring, holy smokes, he just dodged a bullet. Kyle Trudell just zipped by him. And look at this. There's just so much action going on all over the track with the multi-class. Andrew Waring almost got nailed by a GTE that was speared off into the Western Horseshoe.
Let's get a replay of this. This is Mark Stevenson, maybe about 40 or 50 seconds ago. Almost taking out our second place driver in the GT3 class while in a fight for what should be the lead eventually. Here's coming out of the International Horseshoe. You'll see it here in the next braking zone. That's the GTE car that's going to miss him, directly behind him, the Corvette.
So here we go, and if we stay on this replay and go to the lead of our LMP1-2s, they just had a big moment through the bus stop as well.
In fact, it's a battle for the lead right now. If we come back to live here for our LMP2s, and Jason DeVries is going to come out ahead of Steve Driscoll. They come down into the infield. Alex Ellis continuing to give watch in the popcorn position. Things starting to heat up now that we're getting close to halfway.
They certainly are, and those mistakes out of the bus stop costing Alex Ellis that second place position to Steve Driscoll. Driscoll now setting his eyes on Jason DeVries. What I am watching for is Driscoll's driving style here to see if he is a little bit more attacky on DeVries now that he's been able to sit back and save fuel for a couple of laps. Alex Ellis very comfortable back in third, but Driscoll and DeVries, the two that have been seemingly most willing to go at it.
Let's stay here because this could definitely erupt once again. But I've been thinking about you trying to figure out why Christian took a short stop at him. And I think that maybe he was going to have to use up that fuel just to try and catch up to Waring because he lost that time. So he figured, I have to go flat out anyway, so might as well get the track position.
Yeah, so I think what he ended up doing is instead of... I mean, it's entirely possible that he already had saved that much fuel, and that was just how short his stop was. He could be at a full tank, Joe. I mean, he was sitting behind Waring for most of that first stint. So that might be how fast his stop was, and this gap of 4 seconds might have been somewhere closer to 10 had he have hit his box right.
Top three working their way around those GT traffic. And they've got more up in front of them in the form of Brian Bennett, ninth in that GTE class. DeVries approaches. Tricky part here, I have to imagine, unless you're really watching carefully on that F3 box in the sim, is with all the cars having the same color headlights now, it's sometimes, I imagine, difficult to see what class is coming up to you.
Exactly. You've got to use all the tools that you can available to you. That F3 box will give you a readout telling you what it is, as well as multiple other things. And of course, there is that ever-dreaded radio message that you will hear from a spotter or some sort of app that will say there's a faster class car coming up behind you, at which point, if you are driving one of these GTs, I can attest it makes your blood absolutely boil with terror.
Well, let's take some time to cool off and calm down and calm our nerves. We'll do so during a break now that we are between a pit stop cycle. We'll come back here with the second half of round one in the majors. It's the 2.4 hours of Daytona. Welcome back to Daytona International Speedway, round 1 in the 2021 Majors Series. The Daytona 2.4 has been an interesting one. Strategy abounds, some great racing action, and also a few woes for drivers, including guys like Brian Bennett, who put some wheels off into the grass. We got a replay from an incident over the break. Clark Archer also eventually got involved. Now, Brian is going to run into a different LMP2 first. I'm trying to check my notes here to see who that was that he caught. Here's Brian Bennett on screen. It's going to be Daniel Johnson. Yeah.
Daniel actually got enough damage from that he had to go to the pits, and he's currently in for damage repairs because he got collected by Clark Archer, who's had a bad day himself, as Daniel was sitting there. So here's Brian coming around.
Yeah, so we'll watch Bennett, and then we'll need to switch to Johnson in the 23 because he'll be stationary for a bit, and that's when Archer will hit him. Oh, looks like we didn't quite catch it, as we're going to see if we can pull up the replay. We do have Johnson here.
This is post-incident with Johnson slow. This is before he comes into the pits, unfortunately. So he just exited pit road after 135 in the pits for damage repair.
Looks like, sadly, I'm not going to be able to catch that replay as we check out our top two, De Vries and Driscoll. The first time it's been top two in a while. Where did Alex Ellis go? He's 2 seconds back. There he is, flashing through the screen.
And Joe, that 2 seconds is going to be a real dangerous position for Ellis to be in. Whoa! And he spun coming out of the, it looks like, was that coming out
the
of
bus stop?
Bus stop? Oh, I thought for a second that was coming out of it. We're going to check it out on replay here.
Caught a bump?
Yeah, very easy to do. So you watch it there, the two leaders, De Vries and Driscoll ahead of him. So we'll keep it here. Watch Ellis come down, gets it in, and oh, he caught that just wrong, caught the grass, big hit. He's gonna have to go use the fast repair here. That car is gonna have some serious front end damage.
Now, this is on lap 44 for him, so it's a little early in the pit window. I don't know, DJ, is he able to do it from here?
It's gonna be, he's gonna need at least one more stop with the windows that we've been seeing, and he's gonna have to go into super fuel saver mode to try to do it. But I don't know, Joe. It may even be difficult for Ellis, who's just been the master of fuel saving.
Let's see, yeah, 26 and 26, I think will do it. So it's possible, but he's going to have to be pretty slow, and he's going to take tires on top of it. Looks like he's returning to track with the whole car now, but he's down in 12th position and off sequence from here.
Yeah, and he was only able to do about 25 laps on that last run. So he's going to have to stretch it even harder than he did on the last time. And here's the other thing, Joe. He's going to have to be moving up through the field. He's not going to have those equally paced draft buddies like he did with De Vries and Driscoll. He's got to find his own fuel here, and I think it's just going to be a reach too far for Alex Ellis.
Battle for fourth between Espedy and Crabb as they come out of the bus stop. It was awful tight on the way into there, but Crabb a little bit timid through that chicane.
Yeah, I've been keeping my eye on this battle. You know, these LMP2s, they are not a big fan of bumps, Joe, and that's why the bus stop is so tricky. We saw it just catch out Alex Ellis, but here comes Crabb looking to the outside. No, he's going to back off a little bit. Doesn't think he has quite the run to make it work down into the infield section, so he's going to hold back for the moment. Lap traffic in front of him, that is Lyndon Swaby. That allows for Crabb to catch up really close.
Pegleg trying to stay out of the way, flashing his lights to them, letting them know to get through there. And is that also for position? Yes, it is. Behind them, that is David Hanger. Daniel Johnson is not for position, but a third car could enter the fray quite easily.
It very easily could. That is within that magic draft window we talked about. So Hanger going to be able to really catch up here if he's able to get a good run out of the infield. Only about 0.8 seconds back right now. Little bit of lap traffic there. That's Nick Kuhn. That's going to slow down Espedy ever so slightly. And I think Hanger, it looks like he's within about a second, so he'll be able to take advantage of the draft. Here he comes, as here comes Crab to the outside of Espedy into the bus stop.
Looking a lot faster in a straight line. Miles now hits the brakes down into the bus stop. He has snapped up P4 away from Espedy. Well done there. Let's jump away from that battle, though, and see if we can get some time comparisons between Christian Challenger and Mark Torres. Now, I was curious about the gap here, and it's much wider than I remembered. So as we pull up between this pair, it's actually impressive how much Christian Challenger has put his foot down in this, and kind of pays credence to what I was talking about before, where he basically decided it was go time. There you see the difference. And look at that, 1.5 seconds on some laps between them.
Right, Joe, but the problem that we're looking at is that Andrew Waring is in third. Mark Torres managed to get past Andrew Waring, and Waring has not been able to respond. Now, Waring has been caught up multiple times behind Lynn Kinchlow, who's currently the back marker in the GTE class. And Lynn is actually just ahead of Andrew right now as they're going through turns 3 and 4 of the Daytona NASCAR circuit. And Lynn has so much damage that these GT3s are able to keep up with him, but he's got so much damage that he's having a hard time cornering through the infield section, and Andrew Waring ends up getting stuck behind Lynn, who is on the same lap as these guys with major damage in that GTE machine.
Oh, and he's trying to overtake Torres now. That's the second place GT3 car, or is he getting out of the way? Nope, he's going to get out of the way. He sees the writing on the wall, and he's trying to keep from interfering with the battle that is now starting to brew for second place in the GT3 class.
And Joe, not to jump you around, but our leader, Jason DeVries, in the LMP2 class is into the pits. So we saw him come in early on that first stint, and he is in the pits now. Looks like he is not taking tires, though. So that is going to be a triple stint on those tires for DeVries.
Okay. So the Sector 5 driver getting his service that'll take him to one more pit stop to go. Miles Crab in among them, taking stops right now. Looks like Taylor also in. Schmeier trundling down the lane.
Yeah, and this is about the exact window that we thought would happen for guys that weren't on a mega fuel-saving run. So this makes perfect sense. Now, Steve Driscoll, we saw him be able to have a better, longer run on the last time out. We'll have to see if he's able to do that again, pull out that one, maybe two more laps over DeVries.
Oh, and if we could go to the P1 and GTE, Travis Worling just had a bad time through the bus stop, and Matthew Thunhorse is making his way around the outside right now. Travis is going to slot in right behind Matthew. I think the damage is done unless Travis can get his pace going once again. And here he comes, Blessy DJ, as he comes down onto the front straightaway of the Daytona course. He's actually going to back off a little bit and let Matthew Thunhorse stay ahead.
I kind of wondered if he'd do this as soon as he got past, that maybe he'd try to save some fuel like he did on the stint before.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to be a strategy he's going to employ. These drivers are only about 11 to 12 laps into their stints, as most of the rest of the LMP2 field is coming in for their pit stops, with the exception of our top three, Driscoll, Hanger, and Morton, who are still out there. I correct myself, Hanger's in.
Okay. So things getting interesting as the pit cycle reaches its second phase. We continue to ride on board through the Western Horseshoe, looking over the shoulder of Travis Worling at our new leader in the GTE class. Thus far, Thunhorst and Worling have been the two that have been the class of the field here. Walker briefly was with them, but has continued to trickle away from them. Oh, looks like Justin Morton pits in from our LMP2 leaders. So does Hanger.
Joe Driscoll was able to stay out a lap longer than I expected, so he was able to do some good fuel saving back in that third position, indicating now he is coming in. So your leader, Steve Driscoll, will be diving into the pits.
Okay, so Driscoll now the last one able to use one of these longer runs, with Alex Ellis, of course, having his issues. Well, Alex still has to do a long run, but not in the conditions that he desired. Hitting his marks, Steve Driscoll takes his service just as we saw Justin Morton return from his stop.
Yeah, Ellis is going to be able to take advantage here of that alternate strategy. You see him in front of DeVries.
Oh, that's a battle for the lead in the GTEs, I think. Is that Andrew Warren and Thunhorse? Yes, it is. Oh, no, excuse me.
No, yeah, Andrew Waring and Thunderhorse, you're correct on the names, but this is GT3, GTE, and then also that is Justin Morton, third place in our LMP2s as well, all together on track, and they were 3 wide for the International Horseshoe, Joe. Surprised everyone got out of there safely.
Warling is our second place driver, and that got me all mixed up between our drivers. Similar paint scheme, though, teammates, as this is Driscoll still waiting on his service to finish. Ellis is going to go by. Now, Ellis had a short stop compared to guys like Driscoll and DeVries. So that's why they are behind right now.
And DeVries just set the fastest lap, guys.
Oh, man, DeVries has got a real headache in front of him. Eric Smith, who has yet to stop, I think. No, he's taken his stop.
Eric's been able to move himself forward, so I'm not sure. Eric just had a mega stop, about 25 seconds faster than DeVries and Driscoll. I think both of them took tires. Smith and Ellis did not. That's what got him out ahead.
Yes, so the same strategy as Alex Ellis there, sort of. And he pitted 3 laps ago compared to Driscoll, who just has returned to the track. This is for position. DeVries has got to do this the hard way. He doesn't have any help to try and get him by, but he does have fresh tires. That seems to get him that little bit more of speed. Eric Smith can't really fend him off all that easily, but they come up on traffic at just the wrong time. That's Rob Powers in front of them, hampering all of them. They're going to go 3 wide, splitting the middle with Steve Driscoll pulling the brave move, and now he's going to have the slipstream to get a 2 for 1.
Driscoll is not done here tonight at Daytona, trying to power on the outside of Jason DeVries, but it looks like, oh, and here comes Smith, trying to use that as a pick.
Oh, no.
He's going to bump into Driscoll. Driscoll able to save the car, but Smith back up into third. Woo-ha!
I could see that one coming. Driscoll was not drifting up high when he went down underneath him. Smith didn't know it. Thankfully, it did not result in the 2 spinning into the wall, but the slightest bit of contact, and Driscoll's got to be sweating bullets after that one, seeing his race flash before his eyes.
Steve Driscoll thanking his lucky stars and now looking for a little bit of revenge on Eric Smith as they go through the kink here, trying to get anything happening. He is going to be absolutely livid with that bump and run. Needs to remind Eric Smith in his head that this is Daytona 24-hour racing, not Daytona Oval racing.
Oh! Whoa! Down to the inside into turn 6, and Eric Smith gets absolutely swamped by Driscoll, who now gets himself back into 3rd place. Well, it was a valiant fight for Smith. I think it might finally be done.
It might be, but Eric Smith is hanging close. He's able to clear Lyndon Swaby there. That's Lionel Callisto. Oh, my goodness! And he makes contact with Callisto, goes into the bus stop, and that's going to be the end of that battle.
This is the second time this lap that Lionel Callisto has been sent off by an LMP2. He got punted in the Western Horseshoe as well, so Callisto just having the worst lap of his race so far.
Certainly can't get a live feed of that radio right now. I'm sure it is all blue. Let's see what it looks like here from a different angle.
Watch Eric Smith. I am amazed he went this late on the brakes. Lionel Callisto just did not expect that move to happen, and I can't blame him. That was a very gutsy late braking maneuver. from Eric Smith. Callisto just coming down on him, and no fault to Lionel there, as Smith very much putting himself into a dangerous position.
So twice in one lap contact for Eric Smith. I'm wondering how much damage he's got on the car.
I'm wondering how much damage he's going to have in demerits if he keeps this up, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's a good point. We haven't brought up the penalty system. We hope not to have to bring it up too often, but it's an unfortunate side of the racing. They do try to stay strict and keep things clean here in the majors just because of the high intensity level of this series.
Yeah, and the penalty that Eric Smith is going to be suffering right now, you can already see on your screen. He has dropped about 3.2 seconds back to Steve Driscoll, and that number is going up constantly. So I very much think that he has suffered a little bit of damage, but Driscoll there getting hung up by Ryan Steele and Kevin Hill and the GTEs in front of him. No fault of anybody there, just bad timing.
Yeah, and that was after he was gaining on Jason DeVries. He had it down to half a second, and just that one problem cost him 3 seconds now. The LMP2 you see behind him is Josh Collins. That's not for position. Josh is a lap down. Let's head to the GT3s. Torres, who continues to lose on Christian Challoner, has now got Andrew Waring all over his gearbox.
Actually, that's Stephen Jeffrey in one of the Porsches. He has Samuel Harris behind him, and then Andrew Waring is actually a couple of cars back, as these guys are all trying to just navigate through the inner part of this road course. Is so challenging to navigate with the multi-class as they get back onto this front straightaway. Coming into the intersection of the course, Andrew Waring was right on the back bumper of Torres, but just due to the nature of the traffic, he's had to fall back a little bit, but it'll get paid back to him once again as we jump on board with Andrew Waring as we head towards the bus stop. I think it's going to get paid back to him once again as they go through the bus stop, and that's Mark Torres getting held up just a little bit on the entry. He's going to get a bad exit because of it. Andrew Waring should have a decent draft.
And we say it again. Traffic giveth, traffic taketh. So back to 0.6 of a second between Waring and Torres. Torres going to get a little bit of a slipstream from Brian Barnes for the moment. That's one of our GTE cars that gets in front of him. That'll certainly help him as they approach the braking for turn 1 through the tri-oval. Let's stay on board here with Waring. Watch it entering in. Oh, a little bit of smoke. I think somebody may be locked up, so thankfully didn't see a spinning car in front of him. Slowing up, back into the infield. Once again, they go.
It's so hard to navigate this track, especially as you start to get more and more exhausted. And quite frankly, the level of aggression and speed around this circuit in this split, in the pro split, I mean, this has been one of the most impressive races we've seen in the majors in quite a long time. The level of competition is so high in the pro split these days.
Now down to 1 hour left to go in this 2.5 hour race. Drivers are going to have to start doing things, and we're into the pit window for our GT cars if they want to pit and take it to the end of the race. So will we see some drivers try to take unusual strategies to get themselves clear of their rivals?
Well, with the GT machines, I would expect they would want the lighter weight, especially because of the emphasis on lap time that comes from the infield. That's where you're going to make the most time as a GT machine, especially if you're not drafting a car ahead of you. So for those who are out alone in front of everybody, they're probably going to want to try and ride it out as long as they can on this particular fuel tank. But for those who are in the middle of draft battles or in the middle of a large group of multi-class, maybe even just to get some clear track ahead of them, I could see them ducking in and taking an early stop.
Looking at our leader in GT3 one more time. Challoner, the winningest driver in the Major Series, looking set to take another here today if things continue on, but it's not for sure. Again, he is off strategy, so we don't totally know if he is where he is going to wind up. So far, his pace is looking good. We'll have to take a bit of a long pit stop, and then the real fun begins.
Yeah, his long pit stop, and then we get into the final stint, which is where, I mean, you think it's been crazy up to this point, but expect all those battles to break out once again, as everyone is all give and no take in that final stint. because they all want to get it exactly right, as we see Christian Challenger coming back out onto the banking, into turn 1 and 2 of the Daytona International Super Speedway section of this course, getting passed by one of the Forge Porsches in the GTE class.
As Challenger approaches the bus stop chicane, worth noting, even though it's a long distance in terms of numbers, but of those all-time win records, Challenger is at the top. Thunhorst, our former champion, is in fifth. In fourth, excuse me. And the all-time wins tied for fourth with Travis Warling. But Challenger's all-time win record, 22. Compare that to fourth and fifth place in the list. Thunhorst and Warling at 5 wins.
Important thing to bring up, Travis Warling has been closing that gap down on Thunhorst, not by much every lap, but he is closing. It was up to 2.2 seconds at one point. Warling's brought it down to 1.8, so he is gaining on this stint. He's not tucked up right behind Thunhorst like I think he would want to be, but there are no cars separating them right now on track, so between those two guys, 1.7 seconds true on the circuit. And look at this, Thunhorst having to deal with David Hall, who's around his outside, trying to navigate some lap traffic of his own class.
Things getting a little bit more jumbled up as the day goes on. You're going to have to deal with those sorts of issues more and more and figure out the best way through as we head back to the battle for second place in the LMP2s. The 89 of De Vries ahead of the 51. Contact between them.
Oh, big check up there. That was Stefan Jeffrey, one of the GTEs in front of them. Jason De Vries did not expect that big of a break from him. That caused that contact, and now here comes Steve Driscoll on the attack. He smells blood in the water coming into the bus stop. He may not have it here, but if he optimizes it, he can definitely get a run coming through NASCAR 3 and 4. There you see a little bit later on the brakes, holds it back, and here comes the power.
I went back and checked the replay. I think they may have just barely avoided one another. We'll try and watch the replay a little later, but right now the question is, can Driscoll use this slipstream to retake second place over his rival? He's got a good run. Oh, but he lifts. Big lifts.
Yeah, he's backing off again. I think he is looking at the fuel numbers here. Driscoll obviously able to go 2 laps later than Jason De Vries, and both of these drivers, remember, took tires on that last pit stop. But it should be worth noting that Alex Ellis ahead of them has gotten that gap to 4.6 seconds. It's seesawed a little bit, but he still needs tires.
Let's take another look at that incident. This would be a good one from above with a slow-mo, if possible, to see if they actually touched. From my angle, it appeared no. Looking for the 89 of De Vries. Here we go. Great timing here. It'll be into turn 6.
Now watch for this checkup for De Vries. Doesn't expect the break. There it is. He doesn't expect that door to close. Oh, you can't get closer than that, Joe.
Great reactions from Driscoll. I mean, if he had just been 100th of a second later on the brakes, those two would have come together. And that saved both their cars, possibly both their races. Damaging both the nose and the diffuser on those cars would certainly cause a miserable day.
It certainly would, but I tell you, who'd love to see that? That is the first place driver right now of Alex Ellis, who needs all the breaks he can get. That gap at 4.4 seconds currently. So Ellis trying to pedal away as fast as he can from these two, but without having that drafting buddy, he's going to find it a little bit difficult. Now, Joe, if I'm De Vries and Driscoll, I want to start passing, and that's exactly what Driscoll's thinking, trying to go down into one to get the pass made, but De Vries shuts the door. That's not what you want to do, boys. What you do want to do is play a little bit of leapfrog down the straightaways to try to catch up to Ellis.
Now, that wasn't really an intentional pass, I don't think. It looked like De Vries just went wide into the first corner, and unfortunately, it kind of forced the move from Steve. That has cost them a little bit of time. We saw on the lap comparison, the last lap, they were 0.2 faster. I'd like to see more of them, to see what the last few laps have been between Ellis and De Vries. if he's been gaining. We're going to pull that one up in just a moment. Ooh. As De Vries makes a last-second juke to get around the lapped car of David Hall. That looked scary from the outside. Maybe it was less so from the inside. Here's the comparison between P1 and P2 in our LMP2 class.
Well, Joe, it looks like it is exactly what you've been saying all race. Lap traffic giveth and lap traffic taken away. That gap just seesawing back and forth between Ellis and De Vries, pretty much based on where they are catching those slower GT cars.
The nature of the race around them for the time being. So they come up and they're going to overtake Travis Warling, second place in the...
and Driscoll's going for the pass on De Vries. He's trying to go around the outside.
He's trying to hold it the long way around, and the grip just isn't quite there, but he's still tight with him. Coming off the corner, doesn't take a second look into the International Horseshoe.
And Joe, what's significant there is that he does have that fresh rubber like we talked about. So if he is not able to get that there and get that done, I don't know if he's going to be able to do it later in the race, especially considering I have to think Alex Ellis may come in and try to get some fresh rubber on this next event. Oh, that's Matthew Thunhurst right there, the leader of the GTEs, getting in the way of that battle.
Matt, unfortunately, being a bit of a strange spot. Warley loved that. He got passed on the oval portion, so he wasn't held up at all. Travis still trying to reel in that number 98.
Yeah, he just can't seem to get much closer than this gap that we see right now, about 1.2 to 1.4 seconds. There's just nothing doing to try and get back up there with Thunhorse. It seems like Warling is really struggling with the middle of the turns. He just can't seem to get that car rotated in the center of the corners. It's fine on corner entry and corner exit, but it's on the center of the corners where that thing just does not want to turn at all. This Corvette's not behaving well for him.
Wonder if some of it too is Warling, just the nature of the Corvette. We've heard it a lot from drivers that braking hard into corners, it's squirrely, and well, a track like this where you're on throttle for a long time and then come into slow turns, it's got to be a little scary.
And Joe Driscoll's trying to make the move for second place, and I think he's finally got it done past Jason De Vries. He does, stuck it around the outside of turn one and moves Steve Driscoll into second.
All right, he's got the job done. Can he chase down Alex Ellis now that he's free? That's the big question. He seems to think that he's quicker because he went against the advice that we heard earlier of just waiting and working together. Instead, he fought him, looked for the clear air to see if he could catch the number 5. But it's one thing to think you can, it's a whole nother to actually do it.
Exactly. He's got a couple of cars to get through before he gets up to Ellis up the road, but he's got to be able to see it a little bit. And we're getting news that Alex Ellis was able to gain about a second over the course of that battle. So that's going to hurt Driscoll, especially if De Vries chooses to fight back here. Joe, we talked about it at the top of the broadcast. Jason De Vries, not known as a calm, cool, collected driver, always very passionate, very aggressive in these cars. So I would not be surprised if we see him make a move here.
Whoa, and that's a car spinning to the inside of them, thankfully the other direction. Wayne Hutchison in the GT3s running 8th in that class, thankfully catches it. Meanwhile, here we go again. And he's got a huge toe as Jason De Vries sees the inside open, but he lifts.
Yes, what looks like De Vries definitely starting to think about a little bit of fuel strategy there. He's been running in clean air for so long that he probably wants to try to save just a little bit here, see if he can eke out maybe one more lap over what he would have done normally.
Yeah, he's the one that's been pitting earlier than any of his rivals around him. So probably wanting to see if he can get a little bit of an advantage from that. And Steve Driscoll probably will appreciate it because that gives him an easier time to try and chase down Alex Ellis, of course. I know we've been focusing on this battle for the lead in the LMP2s quite a lot, but to be honest, I'm looking through the fields. Most everybody else is kind of running on their own. It's basically cruise mode for much of the field, trying to get to the end. In 48 minutes, that's the length of many races we cover by their own here on GSRC. So there's still lots of time to try and just rifle in the laps.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have some gaps that are fluctuating a little bit, especially the lead of the GTEs between Thunhorst and Warling. That's anywhere from 2 seconds to 1.2 seconds most of the time throughout this race. Christian Challoner does have a solid lead over Mark Torres of about 16 seconds at this point, even after that botched pit entry. But Mark Torres is only being able to hold off Andrew Waring by about 0.8 seconds, but Waring doesn't seem very intent on trying to go by. We're looking right now at Torres up there ahead, and he's got Zachary Brown right next to him, and Jeff Schmeier trying to make his way by. That's Jason Wallet in the 20th position, a lap behind Schmeier, trying to get through as well, so that's why we're seeing this intense... and Schmeier just drifts off the track just a little bit. Should be able to recover from that with no problem. That's going to lose him a little bit of time.
Thankfully, drifted away from everybody. Yeah, man, Torres caught the bad end of the stick with Zach Brown coming out of pit lane just as he was going by, and so that slowed him up through a couple corners. Those GTEs and GT3s pretty similar on pace.
And Joe, I can report from the LMP2 field that Jason DeVries had a very good run using a little bit of toe there as he could, but not able to get by Driscoll into turn 1. But I believe he got a good battle shaping up for P5 in the LMP2s.
Indeed, that is Espedy and Hanger currently. Oh, and they're very much boxed in. Look at this. They're trying to be careful through here and make safe moves as they go by Hutchison to the outside. And Clark Archer also going to follow them through. That's not for position amongst those two. He's just trying to keep watch and get more laps in. Poor Clark has been having a miserable day out here.
He really has, but there you see Austin Espedy taking a little bit of a narrower line to get up onto the banking. He's going to stick right behind him here. That's a good run for Espedy, and now he moves to the outside. Here he goes.
Going to be hard to try and pass into the bus stop, but Hanger's going to facilitate. He gave a little bit of a lift, and the blue kinetic machine now takes P5.
And now the question is if Hanger wants to fight back here. It looks like he's got a good enough run out of the bus stop and into NASCAR 3 to make it work. You can see those closing headlights coming in from Hanger. He's got the run if he wants it. Is he going to go for the move? And it looks like he's going to back off.
And as that was happening, DeVries, who was right up underneath Steve Driscoll, caught traffic at a horrible time as Vincent Leherbier through turn 1 and had to take evasive action so that he didn't run into him. So it's gone up to almost 2 seconds from P2 to P3.
And that gap got a little bit worse for DeVries as Lionel Kalisto, again coming into the middle of everything, had a big lockup coming through the West Horseshoe, and I think that forced DeVries to just back off ever so slightly.
Down to 45 minutes left to go on the clock. Currently, our leaders in each of the classes includes Alex Ellis up at the front of the LMP2s, Matthew Thunhorst leading in the GTE class, and then Christian Challoner up at the front of our GT3s. But Challoner and Ellis are both off sequence on the pit stops after they ran into trouble. So we have big question marks over those cars on what's going to happen after these next set of stops.
These GT drivers are all about 8 to 10 laps away from their stops. As we look at Christian Challoner, he's trying to pull as much of a gap as possible because he still has to pay the piper with a stop unless he can, unless he somehow has been able to maximize that fuel strategy. But this stint, he has not had anyone to draft behind of his own class or other classes that are slow enough for him to catch a good enough draft. So he's been all out this entire time, and it's shown on the timing sheets with that gap of about 18 seconds over Mark Torres.
I mean, we know he has to make up 10 seconds that he lost in pit lane, and then on top of it, there's the extra time that he's going to have to taking that extra fuel. So, yeah, it's a question of how much is it going to cost him overall with the combination of those two. So it's hard to tell for the time being. He's going to get lapped by a couple more LMP2.
Oh, David Hanger's around! Right in front of our second place at GTE, Travis Worling, who's managed to dodge him. This was in the International Horseshoe.
Oh, the 65 facing the wrong way briefly, and it's all his own doing. Travis Worling losing a lot of time here. That's Travis in the purple Corvette, just up in front. The UDOX car, kind of minding his own business, peacefully letting the 65 through, and the 65 takes too much speed in, but a good heads up. Worling could have had a much worse incident.
It loses him about 4 seconds, and that's going to be really hard to make back, especially with the pace that Funhorse has been able to put out, especially on the banking. So Worling in a really tough position right now. He's not going to have anyone to draft off of either, so he has a long way to go to get back to a position where he can race Funhorse. He's going to have to hope to do something in the pits, or hope that some of that fuel saving that he's been doing behind Funhorse for the rest of the stint is going to pay off.
Oh, Challoner's in. And he's already taken his stop. In fact, it was short yet again.
32 seconds.
No tires.
Well then, he's playing a very interesting and risky game. But his pace has been better than the rest of the GT3 field. So if he can continue on a similar pace like that, he should be able to make it to the end. Let's see.
Yeah, 45 minutes is absolutely doable for a GT3. That's good enough, I'm pretty sure. He slots into 4th after this stop.
So about 24 to 25 laps to go in the race. He should be able to make it easily.
Wow, okay.
Or 30.
So
it's, I don't know, Joe. It actually might be closer than we think. Yeah, about 25 laps left in the race. So yeah, it'll be close, but he should be able to make it.
Okay, so Christian Challoner trying to stretch it, trying to push things all the way to the end. When are we going to see Alex Ellis in as well? He's on lap 21 of his stint currently. We believe 23 laps is about a regular stint, but we've watched at least one car go 25. In fact, it was Ellis, wasn't it, that made it 25 laps, or was it Driscoll? I'm trying to recall here.
It was Ellis on that first round. Ellis went 25, Driscoll went 24, and DeVries went the standard 23. Now, Ellis came in on the last lap, on lap 43. We're working lap 65 right now. So we're going to have to see if he can eke this out. The one problem, like we mentioned, it's the same thing that Christian Challoner ran into. He doesn't have anybody to tuck up behind and save that fuel. So he's going to be a little bit compromised. Obviously, he'll be able to take a little bit here and there from slower cars in front of him, but nothing compared to the mega double draft he was getting off of DeVries and Driscoll earlier in the race.
And we had a big moment with Andrew Waring, our second place driver in GT3, and Bruce Perry. In fact, they're squabbling over the radio. They made the slightest of contacts through the kink.
Yeah, I went back and took a look at it, and I mean, I don't know, we've seen this a dozen times tonight, Joe. It doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal from the outside. Now, of course, when you're driving with when you're on board with Andrew Waring, things get a lot more sketchy because you see an LMP2 washing out on the middle of the kink, out into you. So we're going to see it right here as they go through the kink. We're going to have the LMP2 dive to the inside, and Andrew was getting ready to commit to the apex. I think that's why it is making him so upset.
Yeah, and if he had ran into him, they're going at a high rate of knots through that kink, so both of them would have slid way off into the grass, potentially even into oncoming traffic on the other side, depending on how far off they go. Either way, it didn't end in tears, just maybe a little bit of frustration between the pair of them as they work it out and both continue running. Lap 22 now, by the way, for Alex Ellis, as we keep our eyes half on that number 5 and see how many laps he can manage to go.
Joe, I really got to think that he's only going to be able to stretch this 24 if he's very, very lucky. That said, if my math is correct, that should put him okay to get to the end. It's going to be a matter of tires, though, and see where that shakes out. Now, the gap between him and Steve Driscoll has stayed about the same throughout the course here. He's been able to stretch it up to about 5 seconds right now, but that is hemmed and hawed between about 4.5 seconds and 6 seconds, depending on where Ellis has been catching traffic.
He's going to continue on to his 23rd lap now. Next time is the moment of truth for Alex Ellis, our leader in the LMP2s. He's actually still making good time on Steve Driscoll. It's up to 5 seconds. We could probably attribute some of that to the traffic. It's not huge gains. So Jason DeVries, though, seems to have not been able to make up the time that he's lost on Driscoll. Still about 1.3 seconds between the pair of them.
That's right, Joe, but at the same time, DeVries is been very much hampered by some lap traffic. I saw that gap up as much as about 3.5 seconds, and now Driscoll catching a little bit of lap traffic bad. That's Wayne Hutchinson coming through the West Horseshoe, so that'll hurt him a little bit.
Let's head off to P9 in the GTE. Stevenson and Hill in a fight here, and they're towing along nose to tail. That's Stevenson in the black and white machine, black and red machine, with Kevin Hill in the green and white. Takes a little bit of a look. That shallow entry throws him off. Maybe cutting underneath him. Looking for a diamonding of the corner. It kind of works for him, actually. He is right up underneath that rear wing, but he starts to lose out now.
I couldn't straight line the little kink that comes after turn one, so unfortunately he's got to stay behind Stevenson. But Kevin Hill looking for an opportunity to get out of that 10th position and move into the single digits by passing Mark Stevenson. Mark doing a good job of covering off that off that pass attempt by just taking that normal racing line, which does cross the inside dive if you try and make that for Kevin Hill.
Alex Ellis now coming down pit lane. He can only go to the end of 23 laps. This leaves him 36 minutes left, about the time that he exits his pit stall. Ooh, boy. It's, this is going to be extremely tight.
It's going to be, and look at that, Joe. He is not taking tires. I believe Alex Ellis is trying to single stint this entire race on those set of Michelins. So we will have to see if this plays out. I got to think he's going to be very slippy and slidey, and that mid-race tire change for DeVries and Driscoll could pay dividends.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, they take tires after fueling on the LMP2s, but no, you're correct. He is not taking tires. He exited without ever going up on the jacks. At this point, I'd say it's a risk he has to take.
Oh no, 100%, and I agree with that completely and totally. It's the only way he's going to be able to stay up ahead of any of these guys.
That's Crab, who he comes out behind. That is for position, but off strategy from the number 29. Sporting plenty of the dirt and grime that comes with these endurance races.
And our leader in the GTEs is in, Joe. Matthew Thunhorst in from the lead of the GTEs. So it's about that time. Actually, it's a little early, to be honest, but they can make it to the end from here, so possibly a strategy to get into some clearer air.
Could be. And the 98 taking his service. No tires for him, though. That leaves Warling out with clear track in front of him. Big gap back to James Walker, a teammate to Thunhorst, who still circulates. 8 seconds now. Walker's still going to earn himself a handy podium, but would probably prefer if he was a little bit closer and challenging for the win. Looks like we got Eric Smith in number 32 down and hitting his stall. Up to Steve Driscoll. Oh, and there you go. You were talking about it a little bit earlier. DeVries still with plenty of pace in his pocket, and he's made it up to half a second between himself and the 51.
He has, getting that gap down within that magical 1.5, 1.8 seconds to take full advantage of the draft. Here you see DeVries coming on strong. Now remember, DeVries pitted 2 laps earlier than Driscoll on that last pit cycle. Good speed there through the bus stop, but loses a little bit on exit. That's going to be advantage Driscoll as they make their way through NASCAR 3 right now. We'll have to see if everything plays out the way I think it will. Jason DeVries probably coming into the pits within a lap or two, or he's
right
coming
here
right now.
And he's coming in very, very hot. Can he get it wound up in time? Yes, he does. But DeVries on a very short stint compared to the others, but he doesn't need it. this should be a lot more comfortable to get to the end for the 89. Where will he come out in relation to Alex Ellis, who's currently on the backstretch?
That's going to be the real tell here. You saw there Ellis stationary, 33 seconds in the box. There he is working his way through bus stop right now as Jason DeVries currently still sitting in pit lane, getting that car tanked up.
$1 million question. Is Ellis able to recover from his incident out of the bus stop halfway through this race? Looks like behind him, Crab is pitting. Where is DeVries? DeVries still stationary. Ellis is easily by. Wow.
That's a long stop for DeVries. Joe, I've got to think he maybe picked up a little bit of damage there or something. That's incredibly long.
6 seconds difference between Ellis and DeVries.
Yeah, that's a weird in-between time, Joe. We haven't seen times like that. Usually it's around 33 to 36 seconds for fuel, either that or 53 to 56 seconds for tires as well.
So that leaves him 11 seconds behind Alex Ellis. I will be absolutely amazed if Ellis is able to run away with this victory, especially after the thwack that he took into the wall. His spare car, of course, helped him.
And Travis Worling is in from the GTE lead, so the battle between himself and Thunhorse is going to come down to partially this pit stop as well. So Travis Worling in for the lead of the GTEs. Walker is in as well. Thunhorse just now exiting NASCAR Turn 4.
And Driscoll is in his stall. There's Travis Worling exiting.
This is going to be fairly tight. Thunhorse just now crossing the start-finish line. Worling trying to make it to the end of the pit lane.
No, he's well past.
Thunhorse well by, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, Thunhorst has now got a quite handy gap over the 90. Now what about Driscoll and Ellis? Ellis is currently coming off the banking. Driscoll is still stationary. Ellis with a 33 seconds up. 28 second stop for Steve Driscoll. The game is afoot, boys.
That's exactly what Steve Driscoll needed, but they're going to catch some LMP or some slower GT traffic. Ooh, big tank through there. Oh, and it looks like
Ellis made it.
Oh, Ellis, a little bit of contact.
He made it through, though.
Holy cow. Heart in your mouth stuff for Alex Ellis. Let's get an onboard as he watched that whole thing unfold. That was Clark Archer and Zach Brown who came together in front of him.
And this was coming into turn 1.
Yeah, we'll want to back it up just a little more, I think. Here we go. Yeah, this is the helmet cam view of what he saw.
There you see it starts to develop in front of him. Archer gets the big thwack. How did he avoid that? You see that little bit of dink there, that little bit of damage. So or not damage necessarily, a little bit of contact. So Ellis not able to fully escape from that, but still amazing stuff there from Alex Ellis to keep that car on the road.
Somebody send Alex to the sewing club because he sure knows how to thread the needle. 2.5 seconds to make up to Driscoll, and that could have been the critical moment in this race to see if he can win this over the 51.
Yeah, this is the go time for Alex Ellis. We've seen him save fuel like nobody's business. Now let's see if he can power like nobody's business. As here he goes, working his way through that little bit of lap traffic. That's Adam Halleck in front of him. He now has clean up the road to Steve Driscoll for the moment. Driscoll starting to work on a little bit of lap traffic of his own.
As all this has been happening, we were waiting for the GT3 cars to start their pit cycle. I see Torres coming up towards pit entry, but he's not going to come in this time.
Andrew Waring is, though, from second place, so Andrew, who's been trying to catch Mark Torres for the better part of this entire stint, is now into the pits. This should give second place back to Christian Challoner as Mark Torres goes around for another time.
Yeah, Challoner's just coming out of the bus stop currently. Waring down and cleanly in. The opposite situation of Christian Challoner as he got cycled back around to sharing a pit stall at the very front of the pit lane. Challoner's now hitting the line. Waring still stationary. And Challenger easily by. Warren's still sitting there waiting for his stuff to finish. And yeah, man, this is looking very, very safe for Challenger. Now the question is, can Torres maybe take a shorter stop and try and challenge Christian?
It's going to be tough. I think Torres took his shorter stop last time to make sure that he didn't lose too much time in the pits when he took his fuel, when he took his tires. So, I mean, I assume he took tires to spend a minute on the lane. So, yeah, it's going to be. There's the pit stop time. 41.8 is quite a long stop for these guys, and we had a wreck ahead of them. That was Andrew Wood, who just made contact with Joshua Collins. Those two LMP2s battling for 16th and 17th, and Wood, heavy contact to the inside wall. He's going to park it right on the line through the bus stop. Everyone manages to dodge him, but he's going to have to find a way to get out of there safely.
It's a really horrible place to stop it as we go back to the replay. Yeah, as they just come into the corner, a little bit of a tip, and oh, it's always the worst feeling heading towards those tires.
It happens to the pros too.
I thought for a second there when he was parked like that he may have beached it, Joe, and that's why he just stayed stationary, but Wood able to get very lucky not to get hit there, as that is right on the racing line.
Mark Torres is in from the lead of the GT3s now. So he's going to relinquish the lead to Christian Challenger, I believe. Christian only about 34 seconds behind, so with a 50-second transit time on pit lane, this should give Christian Challenger, yeah, Christian's already by, so Torres still in the lane, 22 seconds, so a very short stop for Torres, but Christian's going to have probably about 8 to 10 second lead by the time this all sorts out.
Yeah, Warren came out 10 seconds behind him after the last stop, and Torres is actually mildly closer. Looks like about 8 seconds up to Christian Challenger. Not impossible to try and run him down, but not easy to try and be faster than the number 77. I said there's a target on the back of Christian Challenger. Apparently it's not big enough. Still, even with issues, Christian Challenger finds himself able to lead much of this race. Torres, wow. Oh. That was the LMP2 car of Jeff Schmeier, who nearly spun into the side of him.
That was Alex Ellis who just went by, so he had to dodge yet another wreck trying to catch back up to Driscoll.
I think, yeah, he got his tires in the grass.
That was a scary moment for everyone trying to navigate their way through there, because you don't know where that sliding car is going to end up going. But fortunately, everyone able to get through cleanly there. You're talking about the target on Christian Challenger's back. What better way to challenge Christian Challenger than to win a different class and have the same points as him going into round 2?
Absolutely. Maybe that's why not many people wanted to go into GT3. They saw Christian in there and said, no, thank you. I'll take my chances elsewhere. We don't know, though. You mentioned you think that Challenger might have to save a little bit of fuel. Actually, let me look at his lap times compared to his previous stint, see if he's any slower.
I don't believe he's going to have to save fuel on this stint. I mean, if he was able to get the tank full, he should be able to go all the way, because he was well within the window that we talked about that opened for the GT3s to make it to the end of the race. So I think that he should be able to make it to the end on this tank, but we'll have to keep our eyes out.
Right on board with Christian Challenger here with only less than half an hour to go. And after more than 2 hours here at Daytona, I hope you're not sick of the track, because we're going to have more of it in the next rounds. That's right. The Majors goes to Daytona for the Daytona 500, but for the first time ever, it is going to be a classic Daytona 500. The 87 Cup cars will be the ones vying for that. Starting off, of course, with our European coverage earlier in the day on Sunday, February 21st. So don't miss that. Absolutely looking forward to it. That's one of my most anticipated races next season, is those 87 Cup cars being out on this incredible circuit. Now, let's go to the GTE lead. Matthew Thunhorst and Travis Warling still split by about 3 seconds. That margin could easily come down if traffic doesn't play nice between them. I don't think Travis Warling's going to give this one up easily either.
Yeah, so we're looking at Travis Warling, currently second place in that wonderfully purple Corvette C8R. This machine, a recent addition to iRacing, and it really, I personally do like it to drive. It does tend to over-rotate a little bit, but it's catchable, it's fun. So Travis Warling giving that a nice debut here in the Major Series at the Daytona 2.4. But yeah, like you said, he's got some work to do. He's got about 3 to 3.5 seconds to catch up to Thunhorst. And you have to hope that Thunhorst gets caught out here, because Warling has had his fair share of near misses, and Thunhorst has been relatively clean this entire race. So you got to hope, if you're Travis Warling, that luck swings the other way soon.
So as Warling continues to pound the laps in, he's only got 22 minutes to close the gap up to the leader, the former champion, Matthew Thunhorst, in his Porsche with the Forge team, forging the way, if you will. And I don't think Matthew Thunhorst is interested in giving up anything this round, because like we heard from Adam, that everybody's going to be trying to beat Christian Challoner. Thunhorst only did it the season he won because Christian came in partway through.
Yeah, it goes from 3 classes down to 1 for next round. So, and also it's a complete unknown for these drivers. The Major Series has not driven the 87 NASCAR machines before.
Small correction for myself. Thunhorst won because Christian was in the European region that season that he won the Americas. So Thunhorst probably wants to win in a straight fight, get his crown back. Other thing, and I think I have this one right, is Christian is one of the very few in the Major Series that has multiple championships in the majors. That is another feat that very, very few drivers have managed to achieve over its history of 8 years.
Yeah, the series organizer, Mike's going to have to correct me, but I think it's somewhere between 5 and 7 drivers have multiple championships. So we're going to take a look at the battle between David Hall and Zachary Brown. This one's been starting for a couple of laps. David Hall seems to be struggling a little bit on braking, whereas Zachary Brown back here in the Forge Racing number 28 machine, he seems to struggle a little bit through the center of the corners in that C8R. So this is a Ferrari versus a Corvette, both of them now mid-engine vehicles, and so it's a fairly even fight between these guys, both with very similar symptoms to having a very, very late race tires, especially considering the fact that neither of these guys have taken tires in either of their stops.
Our first time getting to see the Ferrari versus the Corvette in the majors. And I know Peter was over there, as he's a big fan of the Corvette. He was calling the European split. Makes me wonder, since he has sort of a thing going on with Stefan Schlacker on our team, squabbling about that car, if Schlacker was either watching that European split or even driving in it potentially. I'll have to go back and watch and see if they continue that fight.
Joe, I stand corrected. You're right that Christian is the only driver with multiple championships in the Major Series.
I wasn't sure if he was the only one.
Whoa. That's a close moment between Joshua Collins and David Hall, right through the front windshield of Zachary Brown that we just saw happen.
Yeah.
Ooh, boy, that was a scary moment.
And that cost him a lot of time. Brown is now right on top of him. The Ferrari could have a threat into turn 1 as they are approached by Miles Crabb. Is Crabb going to be able to scuttle around and get by cleanly? Brown is going to get that tow, but it's not enough of a tow. He looks around the outside. Oh, and he's going to brake very, very deep. He manages to get side by side the Ferrari into the first corner. Doesn't make the pass, though.
Yeah, I couldn't quite get the traction down, unfortunately, so able to make it through. Able to hold on to that position is David Hall. Zachary Brown just couldn't get the job done. He's definitely better on the brakes, but Hall can get that Ferrari turned in much faster. And wow, Zachary Brown lighting up the rear tires on the exit of the International Horseshoe.
I have to admit, I know we keep harping on this point, I could have sworn that Cameron Dance was one that had multiple championships, but the International region obviously has only had him as a champion once then. So we watch These two come through turn 6 and onto the oval portion, and another bite of the apple for Zach Brown as he pulls the slipstream of the green and white number 10.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the difference is between these two guys' setups. This is an open setup series, the majors, so everyone has the opportunity to set up the vehicle exactly how they like it or dislike it. And it just seems like David Hall can pull quite a bit more than Zachary Brown on these straights, so it might be that Zachary has a little bit more traction here. This is Mark Torres. They're about to go straight past Mark Torres, and Mark's slow.
And I saw some dirt kicked up. I'm trying to see. Yes, this is recent, and it was all on his own, but let's look at this. Through the bus stop, a critical mistake from Mark Torres, costing him lots of time, but not positions yet.
It looks like he didn't make contact with anybody, so there he is sliding through as a self-spin. So here it comes from above here.
That's Bruce Perry that had to go off track to avoid him. And James Walker, our third place in the GTEs, who also got slowed up big time.
And he has now, Mark Torres, lost the second position to Andrew Waring. So Waring up to second, now 12 seconds behind Christian Challenger. Mark Torres 15 seconds behind Waring. So barring some major calamity in the GT3s, I mean, everyone just has to get it home at this point to retain position.
And the GT3s are very, very spread apart. You just listed the gaps between our top three. You get back to LaHerbier, he's 21 seconds behind the next car. Pfeiffer, 13 seconds behind Vincent LaHerbier. Nick Kuhn, actually multiple laps, I think, behind Pfeiffer, or is he just one lap behind? So we take a look at LaHerbier on screen, running another new car that has never seen this series yet, the GT3 Lamborghini.
And everyone I've talked to who's driven this thing enjoys it a lot. So it's a driver favorite among the vehicles that are being provided on iRacing, and I feel like I can say that about a lot of the new vehicles that get put out by iRacing. They just continue to one-up themselves with the excellence in the driving feel of these cars they put out.
Still looking at a good fourth place, though, even though he's a ways off of the podium. And a wreck of any of those three cars in front of him, well, as we just saw, is very possible for Mark Torres. Could net him a chance to spray the champagne here today. 15 minutes left in a 2-hour and 25-minute event. Your leader in the LMP2s is Steve Driscoll ahead of Alex Ellis. Matthew Thunhorst is your leader in the GTEs ahead of Travis Warling. And Christian Challenger is in the lead of the GT3s ahead of Andrew Waring.
And Joe, we talked about it a little earlier, keeping an eye on that battle for P1 in the LMP2s. I thought for a second that Alex Ellis may have been able to pull a little bit of speed into Driscoll, but Driscoll just continuing to press that advantage. The gap up now to about 3.5 seconds, but I've seen it as high as 4.2.
Let's try to check to see who's some of our hard chargers. I know in the LMP2s, Austin Espedy is up 7 positions. He qualified 11th. He's currently in a top 5 spot. Terry Taylor, though, this one is always questionable if you count it or not, because Terry Taylor did not qualify, and he's gone from 22nd to 7th.
I mean, you still have to do the work on the track, so, I mean, even though he started out of position, I mean, there's still a lot of work to do to get up there, and passing quite a few talented drivers from other series that we watch, such as Justin Morton and Daniel Knight. We've seen a lot of Adam Halleck throughout the races before. Jason Wallet we've had on DSRC quite often. All of these very talented drivers. So Terry doing good work to get up there into the top 10, well into the top 10, and he's got about 10 seconds up to Miles Crabbe, so I don't think he's going to be able to get there by the end of the race, but still an impressive drive from Terry.
Speaking of talent, the number of DNFs is shockingly few. We mentioned Henderson was a did not start. Then you've got Kirby, Wood, and Daniel Johnson. That's it. 3 cars have left this race. Everybody else is back out on track. Now, some are many laps down with problems.
And Joe, they're all LMP2s, every single one of them.
I mean, I'm not too surprised, if I'm honest. Those are incredibly tough cars to drive. So we take a look at Hanger here. This is a fight for 8th with Justin Morton just behind him.
And this is one of the closest battles we have in this LMP2 field. You see Morton doing what we've seen done all race, just tucking up behind him in that draft, going to try to get by that slower GT car in front of them before they get to the bus stop. GT smartly moving out of the way, so here comes Morton. Not going to have it here into the bus stop, but let's see what he can do coming into NASCAR 3.
Gets a good exit. The red and black number 9 trying to chase down David Hanger's number 65. As they pull the tow, I think that Justin's got a great shot here. He looks very quick in a straight line compared to David. Oh, but he lifts.
Fuel strategy maybe coming into it a little bit there for Justin Morton, trying to figure out if he needs to save a few here and there to be able to get that car to the finish.
Let's see. Morton pitted at the same lap as David Hanger, which is 10 laps ago. And actually, it's very recent. They went a long time. I'd be surprised if he needs to save fuel then in that case.
You could be right. He could just be waiting for the timing on this, Joe. You know, we've seen it a lot of times that these guys just kind of have to wait to time the pass, especially at a track like Daytona where you have that mega run. If you are as close as Justin is behind David Hanger here on the last lap, you almost don't want to make the pass until the last lap, until coming out of bus stop, because you'll be able to get the draft and it's almost indefensible.
They come on to the banking one more time. He's much closer. Will Morton take it? Will he decide it's not worth trying to overtake here? We've got Christian Challoner in front of him. He's going to stay off to the right side. No, another lift there from the number 9. So yeah, I think it's exactly what you were just talking about. I think he's figuring it's better to kind of wait and bide his time and make sure he picks him off without a chance for him to retort.
Exactly, and you know, we talk about it in a lot of the series we cover about just the mental games you have to do, and so for Morton here, just constantly being in that rear view mirror of David Hanger, it's really going to make Hanger a little bit nervous. He's not going to hit his apexes as perfectly as he would normally if he had a nice clear track, although that GT car of James Walker providing a little bit of a hang up there for Morton, but he's able to avoid it relatively well. But having Morton in Hanger's rear view, it's going to get in his head ever so slightly, and so if Morton can force him into a mistake before he has to make that last lap move, well, that's just all the better.
Now I'm checking in on our leaders in the LMP2s because we wondered if Ellis could chase down Driscoll. The answer doesn't really seem definitive right now. I'm looking at the lap comparisons on my chart, and a bunch of these mildly slower, not huge gaps. But he's also not making the inroads he needs because he has to close down these 4 seconds if he hopes for a victory. Or if not, he's just has to hope that traffic doesn't play nice with Steve.
That's certainly going to be part of it. And Joe, I have to say the other thing is watching Ellis work his way around the track, listening to him, running on board with him as I have a little bit, I think he's got to save just a hair bit of fuel. A bit nervous. There you can see that ebb and flow. He's able to just take little itty bitty bites out of it here and there, but Driscoll able to cover off as well. Can really be attributed to lap traffic on that.
Yeah, it's not the biggest of margins between them, especially with the lap traffic. Usually we're used to seeing it being wide swings, but tenths at a time is minuscule, especially when you consider the size of the gap between them. Now, Ellis definitely lost that time through 5 seconds. It was down to 3 before, so the traffic really did hit him poorly in this lap. Less than 10 minutes to go. Still, I think Alex Ellis should be very proud if he comes home in second place, considering the trials that he's had here today at Daytona.
Oh, that mega hit into the wall and being forced to go on an alternate strategy as he did, and to be able to recover and get ahead of a very, very fast Jason DeVries. nothing should be taken away from that. It is an incredible run here today from Alex Ellis.
Driscoll also will be moving up to tie that those 5 wins with Thunhorst and Warling, but only with one of them, it seems, because Thunhorst and Warling are also fighting for the win in the GTEs so far in favor of Thunhorst, and it would only be Warling that he will be tied with on wins after today. We're going to take a look at Matthew here as the number 98 holds about 4 seconds over Travis. He comes through the tri-oval one more time.
Yeah, and these two guys have been doing very similar lap times between each other, so Thunhorst is doing exactly what he needs to do to keep that gap over Warling. He wants to keep it above about 2 seconds in order to make sure that traffic won't catch him out and allow Warling to get past. So Thunhorst doing a great job leading this race. Walker just continues to fall back, just doesn't quite have the pace that these top two do, unfortunately. So Thunhorst and Warling in a fight on their own, and they're trading blows, but Thunhorst currently coming out ahead. And that was all due to that. Pit stop, a little bit of a pit stop snafu between Warling and Thunhorst.
What if we could go to Hanger once again? We were watching this fight earlier. Morton is right back on the 65 once more. This is our closest fight, I think, in pretty much the entire field currently, as they are squabbling for 8th position.
And that squabble continues. Justin Morton, it looks like a little bit hesitant back onto the banking there, cost him maybe a 100th or 2 of a second, but he's able to tuck back behind Hanger's draft and keep right up behind him as we just go under 7 minutes to go. Morton now really starting to play the strategy game. There you see backing off ever so slightly earlier onto the brakes, conserving what he can, does not want to show his hand early. And I think most importantly here, Joe, he does not want to make a mistake through that very tricky bus stop. We've seen plenty of guys find the wall, and Morton does not want to throw away a good top 10 finish here today.
I'd like to doff my cap to the 65's team, because that is perhaps one of the most clever team names I've seen in sim racing, Intellectual Property Motorsports. Because that's all really a team in sim racing is. It's just intellectual property, not really much in the way of physical stuff. So whoever came up with that one, well played, good sir.
I'm certainly a fan of that, and you see that 65 coming way through the West Horseshoe. Oh, David Hanger has got to be absolutely sweating bullets. I think he knows Justin Morton has the speed, and it's just a matter of time of when he wants to put it. And just a quick note that we were told about Alex Ellis up front. Ellis has hit his numbers, so he is in the clear at this point, just looking like he is unable to close the gap on pure speed.
So we ride on board onto the oval, and Justin Morton really pushing that cart as hard as he can. They'll both take a bit of a slipstream off of Jimbo Pfeiffer in the GT3, who stays low. Morton trying to reel him in as they come up to the bus stop for yet another time, and they're both going to catch traffic here. This is Thunhorst and Kinchlow, not racing for position, 2 different GT classes.
Looks like they're both able to navigate pretty well on the high side. There you see Justin Morton. A little bit of a higher line there from him, trying to carry a little bit more momentum out, maybe just trying something out. There you see that back off a little bit from Morton, not wanting to press the issue. Under 5 to go. He's going to have a couple more bites at the apple. Big lock up in front of them from Lionel Castillo.
And a bobble from Morton, under braking into the first turn. He catches it, but the car gave a big snap on him.
Yeah, Morton's had a couple of spins today. Still trying to recover from those. He was as high as 4th place in this race at one point. So he's currently on a recovery drive, and the hard braking into the turning of these horseshoes seems to be his Achilles heel. So as he goes around the outside of Lionel Callisto, that's where things seem to be getting to him. Look at that, the LMP2s, when they get out into those marbles, those outside tires just completely spin up on them, and they can't get that diff to lock again. It really causes them to struggle as they come off of these corners to get the power down.
Yeah, that one cost him. Looked like he was well out into the marbles there for a couple of those corners, and he's going to have to try and work to get that gunk off of the number 9's tires and regroup, try and attack David Hanger to see if he can procure that 8th position. Down to 3 minutes left. And Steve Driscoll.
That was a moment from Justin Morton, but we're going to take a look at Steve Driscoll as he's still leading this race on the back straight.
Now we're going to be 2 to go this time by. So he's just off of the bus stop. They're running laps about 1.5 minutes in these LMP2 cars. Here comes the 51. Let's see what time he's going to cross here at. Oh, it's very close actually to 2 left. I think, yeah, okay, he definitely will only be 2 to go here. So, should be within it. Meanwhile, where is Thunhorst? Actually, Thunhorst is right ahead of Driscoll. So he might be close at the finish. Challenger, on the other hand, is on the other side of the track. Oh, and who is that off course there? That's Lynn Kinchlow. Just spun himself, don't need a replay. The 44 also way out into the marbles and lost control of the car. Doesn't hit anything, just keeps going. Back to the battle that we were looking at. Yes, indeed.
You read my mind, Joe. I was going to say we jump back to the battle. David Hanger able to pull out a little bit of a gap to Justin Morton, but Morton starting to claw back in the draft. They were unlucky, caught a little bit of lapped cars. Liam Quinn, Vincent Herbier, and all of them through that infield section, but you see there's Morton a little bit more confident on the brakes, takes a big chunk out of the exit of the bus stop. So here he goes. This will be 2 at the line for both of these guys, and they've really got to keep each other in line. Morton has got to start putting the pressure on here. He doesn't have that many opportunities. I think he'll try it on the next lap, but he is closing fast.
Does he actually go for it? No. A lift from him. Driscoll just behind them, actually. They're some of the last ones. They are the 2 last ones on the lead lap of the field. Driscoll crossing now. So yes, absolutely the last lap. White flag has been waved for the number 51. You talked about taking a big chunk through the bus stop. It hit me. Normally, this is a track where we see a lot of slowdown penalties, and I don't recall seeing all that many today.
No, we really haven't seen that many from anybody. And also, I'm keeping my eye on Thunhorst and Driscoll. It is possible that Driscoll won't pass Thunhorst here on this white flag lap for Driscoll. If he does, it is the final lap for Thunhorst as well. If he doesn't, Thunhorst de facto can win the race because he would have completed an extra lap than Travis Worling in second behind him. So Steve Driscoll 2 seconds behind. So we'll see what's going to happen here.
Oof. We'll see as we now take a look at our leader, Christian Challenger, just coming onto his white flag lap as well. This is going to be very tight. No, I think he's got him. I think as long as he doesn't hold up, which I don't think he has the time to do so, Driscoll is going to overtake Matthew Thunhorst because they come through the bus stop and off the corner. He should easily out-accelerate the number 98. There goes Steve Driscoll to the high side. He started on the front row. The pole went to Jason DeVries, but once again, he is snake bit on those wins because Steve Driscoll is going to take his 5th win of his career in the majors, and it'll be in the opening round here of the Daytona 2.4. Matthew Thunhorst as well, upping it to 6 wins for him in the major series.
Christian Challenger just now exiting the infield, headed on to NASCAR 1 and 2. He's run not a perfect race. He had a little bit of a bobble in pit lane, but he's been able to make it up with his fuel strategy entirely, and he is coasting this thing pretty gently towards the end. I'm not sure how close he is on fuel. I guess we'll hopefully be able to talk to him and find out, but as he exits the bus stop into 3 and 4, Christian Challenger, it's pretty much a straight shot from here.
Yeah, and at 23 seconds between himself and Warren, he can afford to be a little tight on fuel. Imagine if he hadn't have made that mistake, how big of a gap this would have been. Challoner comes to the line with another victory, extending his record here in the majors. So the GT3s won by our current America's champion. That's going to take us to a quick break here on the Global Sim Racing channel. We'll come back with the unofficial results as well as driver interviews, so stick around. Welcome back to Daytona International Speedway, round one in the Majors 2021 season. The Daytona 2.4 wound up going to Steve Driscoll in the end. Alex Ellis, who had some dire moments bumping into the wall, having to take his spare car, still came back and recovered well, managing to climb into second place ahead of Jason DeVries, our pole sitter, still trying to figure things out in the race, even though he's great in qualifying. But he gets a podium today. Eric Smith was P4 ahead of Austin Espedy with a great climb from 11th to 5th. In this level of field, that's quite impressive for the number 7 car. Miles Crabb finished in 6th. Terry Taylor didn't qualify, so he started from the back of his field and wound up in 7th in the end. Justin Morton was P8 as he managed to overtake Hanger due to David running out of fuel. David Hanger did finish this race sputtering across the line in 9th, last car in the lead lap. Jeff Schmeier, a lap down, rounds out your top 10. Daniel Knight with an 11th was ahead of Adam Halleck in 12th, and Chris Yatito in 13th was ahead of Clark Archer in P14. Then it's Josh Collins finishing in 15th, Johnny Nichols in 16th, and Bruce Perry in 17th. Then we get to cars 2 laps down, Marcus Tracy and Jason Wallet, the last of our finishers in the LMPs. Adam?
Matthew Thunhorst took home the win from pole position in the GTE class, with Travis Worling making the pass on James Walker early in the race to try and put the pressure on Thunhorst, but couldn't quite get there. James Walker coming home in that 3rd position. Stephen Jeffrey comes home in 4th. A solid run for him, but just couldn't quite keep up with the guys up ahead. Brian Bennett moves up from 9th to 5th position tonight, with Kevin Hill finishing behind him in 6th. Lyndon Swapey, a consistent drive from him, puts him in 7th position tonight, with Liam Quinn coming home in the 8th spot. Lionel Callisto did not have the greatest race, just and got punted twice by LMP2s on the same lap, but manages to come home in the 10th spot. Mark Stevenson coming home in 11th with Kyle Trudell in the 12th spot. David Hall coming home in 13th. Brian Barnes in 14th today with Sammy Harris coming home in 15th. Zachary Brown in the 16th spot with Ryan Steele 17th. Josh Coley 18th. And then Lynn Kenshow had a pretty miserable day today. He comes home in the 19th position in the GTEs, DJ.
Christian Challenger putting in an absolutely dominant performance to take home the P1 crown in the GT3 class, followed by Andrew Waring behind him. Mark Torres lining up in that third podium spot. Vincent Herbier is able to get fourth, but Brian McGreevy, one of the GTE cars falling way down the order, able to pop in above him. Jimbo Pfeiffer coming home in fifth place in GTE, followed by Nick Kuhn, Jason Brophy, and Wayne Hutchinson, and following it all out, and Rob Power in the final GTE finisher. Daniel Johnson, Andrew Wood, and Justin Kirby, some of your retirees from the race, all from that LMP2 top class.
That takes us to our winner in that LMP2 class, Steve Driscoll. Steve, it seemed a little bit back and forth through the middle of the race, partly because of Ellis being somewhat off strategy. Did that concern you at all, or did you feel pretty confident you'd be ahead of him after the pit stops?
I was pretty certain Alex was going to be ahead of, but be behind me, but I didn't know if he had enough fuel to make it. So I just wanted to make sure. And with him, if he's able to get close up that gap, he'd probably be able to save that fuel. So it was go time as soon as I got out of the pits and just try to maintain that gap. I think it got down to like a second and a half at one point. So yeah, it was time to go for it.
Obviously, you were pretty high up in the standings last season, but Christian Challenger made it hard for everyone. However, you started off with a victory, so you'll at least be tied on the points after round one. How do you feel coming into this season? Do you think you've upped your game enough that you could take the fight to him?
I think everybody at Evolve Sim Sports has come together, and I think we're going to give it a good shot. I mean, Christian's kind of he's kind of the Iron Man or the Ice Man, if you will. So we're everybody at Evolve. We're gonna try to put as much as we can into at least make it a fair fight this season instead of a 700-point victory or something like that.
Obviously. And then, of course, next round, we switch gears completely. And for the first time, we're racing the 87 Cup cars for the Daytona 500. Do you have excited feelings for that, or is there any dread?
Excitement, I don't think's the word for it. I think entertainment might be the word for it. But expecting with Christian's oval experience and some of the other guys in the series, I'm just trying to get a top 5, top 10 out of that race and just kind of survive.
Well, we'll watch out for you and see how you fare in the end. Congratulations, Steve, opening things off with a victory.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to thank everybody at Direct Innovations, Apex V2R, and also wanted to, give a shout out to you guys at GSRC, everybody at the majors, and also the Wounded Warrior Project for our charity this week. So I just want to thank everyone.
That was our winner in the LMP2s. In the meantime, I believe we've got DJ talking to Matthew Thunhorst, our winner in the GTE class.
Well, Matthew, it was a great victory here today, but Travis didn't exactly make it easy for you. Talk us through this tricky race.
To be honest, it felt kind of like the race of traffic giveth and traffic taketh. Because it's like when the first time the LMP2s came through, I was just felt like a bull rush coming through, and then afterwards it started to ease up and people started to take more time. But yeah, I got a little disappointed there at the first run through us with the laps and the traffic, because I thought me, Travis, and James were going to be able to kind of hold together, and then we got split apart. But I mean, the thing that was quite rewarding for me is just the fact that, even when Travis was able to get away, I was able to run him back down. And then I kind of got lucky with the way traffic hit in that second round, or kind of the second stint, where I took the lead, and then all of a sudden the traffic kind of garbled up around him, and I kind of was able to sneak out to like a 2 or 3 second lead, and he wasn't allowed to save on me. So I was pretty fortunate like that. But yeah, it was a hard race, but it was a race that dealt a lot with traffic today.
Well, it seems like that's always the case at Daytona, and anytime we really do any of these multi-class series. I mean, obviously running in sort of the sandwich group here, as it were, the meat of the sandwich in the GTEs, how difficult is it for you to be focusing in on the battle at hand, knowing who's behind you, who's ahead of you, and then hearing that dreaded, there's a faster class car behind you, not wanting to get in the way of a big battle?
Well, I mean, I've always enjoyed racing the GTEs, and being around the GT3 guys wasn't a big deal. I mean, we had plenty of speed to kind of pass them up on the oval, so that wasn't a challenge. You just had to be careful not to ruin their race by being a little overzealous or breaking too deep. But again, really the hardest part for me was just the way some of the LMP2 guys are driving, because it's when I lost that lead the first time to Travis and them all, and it was just like we go into the bus stop and an LMP2 would get you right into the braking zone, and it's just like you almost would have to bail and just take the slow down almost, because I was about ready to wreck a couple of times, and it's just like, guys, 80 lap race. I mean, come on, a little respect here. But after that, like I said, it cleaned up, so that was the biggest issue.
Well, it was actually, I would say, a remarkably clean race from what we were seeing. Only 3 retirements across the entire field. But coming back to Daytona for the next race in a little bit of a different spec, the 87 Cup cars being introduced to the majors for the first time. How do you feel about it?
It'll be interesting to see how some of the guys handle it, but I've always been a fan of the oval races where the cars maybe a little bit harder to drive, or there's a little bit more finesse or technique that needs to go into it rather than just put your foot to the floor and well, just keep the wheel straight. So I'm looking forward to the 87s. I hope the other people put in the preparation, we can put on a good show and it's not a caution fest, because those cars are a handful. But I mean, if we can get a handle on it, it'll be very entertaining for the fans to watch, and we can put on a good race.
Well, we are certainly hoping that it will be a good race, as anytime I've seen the 87s, it's always a good time. But Matthew, congratulations again, and anybody you need to thank tonight before we let you go.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just the guys at Forge decided to pick me up this year, and Mark Stevenson just decided to ask me because I was planning to run solo, and so I've been with those guys. So it's pretty exciting to get my first pole ever in the majors with them, and it's exciting to kind of pick up a pro win for them. So, I'm not sure what this year is going to handle for me, but those guys were pretty fun to prep this race for, and a lot of thanks goes out to them.
Well, thank you, Matthew, and congratulations once again. And now Adam Lindgren has caught up with our GT3 winner for the day, Christian Challoner.
Yeah, Christian, a very impressive run today and starting off the season in style, coming home with a win. But answer this burning question. On that first stop when you missed your pit box, because I mean it was so early, nobody's surprised. But when you missed that pit box and you rolled back into your stall, did you take a full tank of fuel?
No, I didn't, and I never planned to. I was always going to cut those last 2 runs. I was going to cut them in half. So I knew I was taking 90 liters, and I'd kind of made that decision maybe 4 or 5 laps earlier, just on the basis of everybody was draft locked together anyway, and I knew that if I came out within, say, a second of either Mark or Andrew, there was no way that I was going to get away from them. So I thought, you know what, maybe if I do this, maybe this is going to give me the advantage to get away and just actually use some pace to try and build a gap, so that then when we pit that second time, I never expected to be as far up the road as I was. I was realistically expecting to maybe build the gap out to, say, 5 seconds or something like that. So when I missed the box, that was big time panic, because I was pretty certain that I just lost the race right there. I've had that stall before in a Coke Series race, so I should have known. And the funny thing is that it happened to my teammates. It happened to Vince as well in the support race last week. And we all had a big laugh about it on Discord about how he missed it, because he missed it twice. He actually missed it once and then missed it a second time as well. So that was pretty funny. But to then not remember that and make that same mistake was, yeah, I should have known. I should have known, looking at where I was in the lineup, and known that I was the last pit stall. And I didn't need to come in as hot as I did. And yeah, it was just, honestly, it was just stupid. I was really mad at myself for that mistake.
Well, fortunately, it turned out well for you in the end, with you pulling a 24-second gap on Andrew Waring in second place. But talk to me about next race for the majors here. We have the 87 Cup cars at Daytona. Now, we know that you are a Cup guy and that you've raced in the Coke Series before, but this is something a little bit different.
Yeah, so I've driven the 87 Cup cars on the old version of Daytona, and that's really extremely fun. That's also very, very difficult, actually, because there's really only, well, you can run 2 wide there, but it's hard to do that. and the track feels narrow, and realistically the line is dead in the middle of the track. So it ends up being one line, but it is very, very fun. And I'm actually intrigued to see how it races on the new track, so to speak, with obviously it being a lot smoother and quite a bit easier actually to get around. So I think it will be definitely different to what people expect. And I don't think you're going to see pack racing in the same way as that maybe people think you will. I think you'll see a lot of kind of single file train and guys jumping out to try and get ahead and whatnot.
Yeah, well, Christian, congratulations on the win tonight. We do look forward to seeing you next round, but is there anyone you want to thank before we let you go?
Yeah, actually, I got a couple of things that I need to say on this tonight. I know sometimes I miss this actually quite a few times because I kind of ramble on my questions, and I know that kind of leads into the interview going on for longer than it probably should. But I do have a couple of things to say tonight. So first off, I actually want to say a big shout out to John King, who is pretty much the guy who has ran Kinetic and all the previous teams that have really been on in terms of road racing. So all the way back to Blackadder and whatnot. And I know he's been having some trouble recently, and I hope he's well enough to make a proper return soon. And I'd really like to see that because he really helped me out a lot when I got started on iRacing, literally to the point where I didn't even know that we had weather effects in the sim and whatnot. So I want to give him a big shout out, and also I want to give a big shout out to my crew chief, who realistically got me into the Pro Series and ran me for the first year of the what is now the Coke Series, Jason K. Miller. We knew that he was not doing so good over the last half of 2020. And unfortunately, last week we actually found out that he'd passed away over the holidays. So that's really affected myself and a lot of the guys who used to be on the One Up team. Jason was a absolutely stand-up guy, and I really wouldn't be where I am without his help. And yeah, we're gonna miss him a ton. And it's just sad. Like he put everything into really helping other people, and he was very passionate about racing on iRacing, and I hope that we can kind of continue that on for him because he made a big impact on our lives, and it's just sad that we've lost him.
Well, Christian, we're very, very sorry for your loss and the loss of those who knew him, but we're very proud of you for carrying on his legacy and the work that you are doing for iRacing in a professional capacity. So thank you for that work and congratulations on the win tonight.
Thank you, guys.
That was Christian Challoner, our winner in the GT3 class, and Joe is going to talk with Andrew Waring, who finished right behind him.
Indeed, but he was in front of him for a good part of that race. Andrew is, even though you didn't beat him here today, was it a bit of an ego boost, a confidence boost to be able to compete with him as close as you did for much of it?
Christian, well, first of all, I would like to say I thought he crashed in the middle stint, and I think Mark and I both kind of backed off, and I started saving fuel a lot. But then all of a sudden he appeared out of nowhere again. But Christian is, I learned last year racing against Christian that it's not just the speed you have to deal with. He knows the simulator so well. He knows all these tricks. I could tell he was baiting me on the first stint there, saving his fuel and stuff. And when he came out of that first stint, I think he was roughly 4 seconds ahead of me. I pretty much knew at that point he has the speed to pull away. And I just thought a mid-charity move from my part maybe was, instead where I would have tried to chase him last year, I just kind of backed off and tried to secure second by fuel saving with Mark. But Christian's proven time and time again he's in a kind of a league of his own right now, and it's up to us to close the gap.
Well, still, you did manage to get a podium here today, and it seems like you were racing in one of the smallest classes, and we kind of talked a little bit about it. It looked like the GT3s kind of had the worst time dealing with the faster classes coming through because there weren't that many of you. Did it feel that way inside of the car?
The infield section for all the cars, honestly, because the LMP2s, they may be quick under braking, but they don't rotate through the middle of the corner very well. So the GT3s and GTEs are actually a little quicker. So it depends on where you caught them. Personally, I didn't have too much of an issues with the LMP2s. I tried to stay well out of the way, and I didn't get really dive bombed into the bus stop that much. A couple times though, like I would go low, somebody would go high, and then the LMP2 tries to split us. So, sometimes it was a little hairy when they'd pass you in that, I'm not sure which corner it is, the fast left. Because we didn't change tires, so it's pretty hairy on the outside. But overall, I thought everybody did good. Coming from MTech, I thought it was much better than MTech has been in the last 2 rounds. So it was good.
Yeah. Those races can certainly be crazy from when we've
Yeah.
called them.
Yeah.
Looking forward, though, we have a whole bunch of new races that have not been run here in the majors before. So lots of new stuff and shiny new toys. Is there anyone in particular that's caught your eye that you're excited to get to?
Personally, I'm excited for the F1 car again. High downforce stuff is more my cup of tea. I really need to work on ovals, so the next race is going to be quite tricky for me. Also, I think the International or Euro, I can't remember which one it is, the F3 at Zolder is very tempting. Overall, I think the majors does a heck of a job using all the current content that iRacing has, and also keeping true to what their roots is, which is replicating real life races. So they do a really good job, and that's why Steve brought me in this kind of championship last year, and I've tried to bring in a bunch of guys this year with Evolve, and we all enjoy it so far. So.
Well, I enjoy getting to call it year after year. Again, congratulations on a second, Andrew, and hope to see you at Daytona in about a month's time.
Yeah, we'll see you guys there, and hopefully Evolve will be flying the flag again.
They certainly look good today, both taking a second here in the GT3s and a win up in the LMP2s. But we're going to close it out, of course, with a big thank you to the majors, not only for bringing us back for that coverage, but because of the charity that they have done for this round yet again, the Wounded Warrior Project. Again, if you want to check them out, they are at woundedwarriorproject.org. A thank you also goes to the companies that provide the software and the hardware for our broadcast that are listed here on your screen. Additional thanks to June Lalonde, who provides our wonderful music. Her Bandcamp is listed there at the bottom of the credits. And thanks to the team today, Adam, DJ, Sean, and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. Or you can check our social media on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global Sim Racing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. We've got a merchandise store on top of things. That is simply at .storeenvy.com. Link is in the description below. Next race, as we mentioned, is back here at Daytona, but instead, it's on the oval. It'll be the 500 and the 87 Cup cars. That'll be Sunday, February 21st at 8 p.m. Eastern. We have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. And until next time, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.